The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to the Linux Action Show, episode 367. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Well, guess what, Noah? We got a big show today. Are you ready?
Big show.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we're going to review Fedora 22. The big release from the Fedora project is here, and we are really excited. They've switched over to the new DNF package manager. There's a few major changes. It includes Gnome 3.16 and a few speed bumps we hit. We'll tell you about those coming up in the show. But also in the news segment, we're going to talk about what really happened behind the whole Mandriva Mandrake shutting down thing. We've gotten some very interesting details there that we'll share with you guys. SourceForge is messing around with the GIMP project. You're not going to believe what's happening there. And if you do know what's happening there, you're going to want to hear what we have to say about it. The Kubuntu project's drama, we're going to talk about that, as well as a possible decentralization of GitHub. I'm really excited about that initiative. Stay tuned for that. And then in the feedback segment, we've got some great follow-up. But Noah, before all of that, it is
our picks.
It is our picks, Noah. And this week was Google I/O, and they unveiled a bunch of stuff. And some stuff that is very much Linux-powered, some stuff we may never see, some stuff that could be total moonshots. This one, Project Soli, for like maybe Solar, you think, or Sonar? I'm not sure how they... Soli. It's Google's radar-based wearable control technology.
Yeah.
Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I'm going to play this video for you from the Googs, and they talk about it. And if you watch, we're going to play Spot the Linux as we go along, because I think we're going to see Linux in a few places.
I love
here.
Spot the Linux. That's my favorite game.
And you know, as I've messed around with wearables a little bit and things like that, I could see where this kind of interface is useful. It's kind of mind blowing. So yeah.
Well, no, it was funny because when we were previewing this, he's sitting on his couch and he goes, as they're watching, I can see him over watching the video, and he's like,
yeah,
that does feel better.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, so you know when you're tapping glass, they'll show in the video when you're tapping glass, like you don't get good feedback. But when you tap your own fingers, you actually get a haptic feedback. Your own squishiness. So you'll see in this video your own squishiness.
That's great.
It is.
That's good. Use that term.
It makes for great computer feedback. You don't need to build in taptic buzzing. Just use your own squishiness.
And I work for Advanced Technology and Projects Group at Google. The hand is the ultimate input device. It's extremely precise, it's extremely fast, and it's very natural for us to use it, right? Capturing the possibilities of human hand was one of my passions. How can we take this incredible capability, finesse of human actions, and finesse of using our hand, but apply it to the virtual world?
No, I think if we watch closely,
radio frequency spectrum.
So he says we're using radio frequency spectrum, and if you're not watching the video version, there's a little micro sensor that it's a solid state sensor. There's no moving parts to it, and he's able to move his fingers over, and then using radar. Yeah, the same radar that cops bust you on the freeway, or the doors open for you. Using radar, it's able to get the most minute movements.
Radars to track human hand.
There's Linux right there.
Radars has been used for many different things to track cars, big objects, satellites and planes. We're using them to track micro motions, twitches of human hands.
Unity.
And then use that to interact with wearables and Internet of Things and other computing devices.
So they're able to interact with like a Bluetooth speaker.
Our team is focused on taking radar hardware and turning it into a gesture sensor. Radar is a technology which transmits a radio wave towards a target. And then the receiver of the radar intercepts the reflected energy from that target. The reason why we're able to interpret so much from this one radar signal is because of the full gesture recognition pipeline that we've built. The various stages of this pipeline are designed to extract specific gesture information from this one radar signal that we receive at a high frame rate.
From these strange foreign range Doppler signals, we're actually interpreting human intent.
Now they're controlling
Radar has some unique properties when
they're controlling like the X11 mouse cursor with this. They're able to control the in one case they're able to move the terminal window around on the screen.
To cameras, for example. It has very high positional accuracy.
Look at that. That's Unity on a MacBook Pro right there.
Which means that you can sense the tiniest motions.
We arrived at this idea of virtual tools because we recognized that there's certain archetypes of controls, like a volume knob or a physical slider, a volume slider. Imagine a button between your thumb and your index finger, and the button's not there, but pressing this is a very clear action, and there's a natural physical haptic feedback that occurs as you perform that action. The hand.
You know, Noah, out of all of these, foot controls and mouse and all this, and touch and voice interaction, you keep touch, keep voice interaction.
Right.
Give me this.
Yeah.
Build this into the trackpad where I could just do this over the trackpad. I could just. And let me move things around on the screen, and then I don't get fingerprints. I feel like the more accurate controls give me because I feel like touchscreen's just still too clunky. Plus, I'm blocking what I'm looking at.
So the way I kind of feel about it is I don't really have a problem interacting with the hardware. That trackpad and keyboard works just fine for me.
You got to keep those.
But where I really see that becoming a thing is that soldering thing, right? That we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Imagine I have ADD and I drink a lot of caffeine. Me trying to solder something that small would be a joke.
Yeah.
But imagine if I had like a little one of those hot air soldering guns, and I could just move my finger around.
Right.
And it would do the. I could see.
That would be amazing.
I mean, it unlocks a whole other way of doing things.
I think watches. This could be an amazing way to interact with watches. This could be a great way to interact with devices that don't have screens, like a Bluetooth speaker. If you could do it all with sound feedback, and I think you can integrate it into laptops too. And what gets me excited about this is what Google is doing is they're building it first under Linux.
Right.
That's what's exciting, is they're using Ubuntu. And the other thing we're noticing more and more with these runs Linux segments recently is Ubuntu is becoming, well, it could be Linux in general, but they're choosing to use Ubuntu. It's becoming like the hardware unifying operating system. In last week's runs Linux and in this week's runs Linux, you see a wide variety from everything from HP, ThinkPads, and Macs, but they're all using Ubuntu across all of them.
Yeah.
So they're standardizing away this differentiating hardware all on Ubuntu, and they're not just saying, well, it's a Mac, we're going to stick with Mac OS. They're saying, actually, for common development, that way all of the teams on the same page, we can just put Linux across all of these machines.
That was one of the things that first drew me to Linux to begin with, was this idea that I would buy the newest version of Windows, and then I would realize, oh yeah, I have 6 computers I have to upgrade. Well, now they all have different versions, and some of them have different service packs and all this. With Linux, I get to a point and I'm like, well, I want to go to the next version of Linux. Great. I go download the ISO.
You're
and
done.
Boom. All my computers have the latest version. It's awesome.
You know what else is Linux first? Our first sponsor, and that's DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and check out some rigs built for you up in the cloud that you're going to get root access to. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own machine. You're going to get root access to this box, and what I love about it is you can SSH in, or you can do the HTML5 console. That's super advanced. I think that's a really sweet. They've written that whole thing in Go. It's super fast. It works in all of your browsers. I love it. And their whole control panel's like that. And you can get started in less than 55 seconds over at DigitalOcean, and pricing starts, get this, at only $5 for the entire freaking month. For $5, you're going to get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, they're all SSDs, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of dedicated transfer to you. For $5 a month. That's less than 1 McDonald's burger for the entire month. You get a Linux box up in the cloud. You deploy the distribution you want. You can use one-click installations. It's super fast, and you are the boss. And DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, Germany, and London. They're awesome data centers. They're really proud of that, and they should be. As somebody who spent a lot of time in data centers, I got to tell you, they have really built those things out well. Something else they've built out incredibly well is their interface. It's so super intuitive and powerful too. They managed to make it simple and intuitive, but they didn't water down the functionality. And in fact, speaking of functionality, power users can replicate that functionality on a much wider, larger scale with DigitalOcean's straightforward API that actually is freaking awesome. It's an API you want to put in your mouth and chew on because it tastes so good, spit back out, and now you got something magic. And you don't even have to build it yourself. The community's built a ton of great apps that snap into your existing management infrastructure, or let you manage it from your Android device or your Linux desktop, or your probably, if you got a Mac, you probably could do that too. You can. DigitalOcean.com. Go over there. Use our promo code LASDigital. LASDigital. LAS Digital. That supports the show. Gets you a $10 credit. And the best part is, ready for this? You can apply it at any time. So if you forgot to apply it when you created your account, you can go back in there, LASDigital, get a $10 credit, try out that $5 rig. That $5 rig, 2 months for free. LASDigital, one word when you check out. Try out their one-click installation of things like Ruby on Rails, Docker, GitLab, WordPress, Ghost. I mean, there's a ton of them. And also, be sure to spend some of that time taking advantage of their awesome community tutorials. Go over to DigitalOcean. Remember our promo code LASDigital. When you spin up that free rig, go look at this tutorial, how to set up SSH keys. Is that a weak spot for you? Is it something you need to learn? Here's a pro tip. You don't have to be a DigitalOcean customer to take advantage of that one. Just go over there and read that one. How to set up an open VPN server on Ubuntu 14.04. How to create Ansible playbooks to automate system configuration. Hells yeah. Wow. wow, you could almost pay for some of this stuff. In fact, here's the funny thing. DigitalOcean is willing to pay you to write this stuff. They have open writer positions too. If you are a technical writer and you've done some editing, they're hiring those. If you're a Linux sysadmin, DigitalOcean has those positions open as well. You can get a job over there. They're taking applicants, and they wanted me to pass that along to you guys. But go try out DigitalOcean, Last Digital, spin up a rig. You can try anything. I've got several: OwnCloud, BitTorrent Sync, C-File, Minecraft. What else do I got? No, I've got an FTP server up there that I bang against. I've got a torrent server I can use to download things from time to time. What's some of the things you use DigitalOcean for?
Well, so I obviously, one of the things that we'll do is we go into a client and they'll say, well, our server died, or our server's having problems, or even just the server's fine, but we have to take it off for a little bit to do an upgrade. Where can we move our data to? What can we do? The ability to walk into a client location and say, listen, here's what I can do for you. We're going to charge you. We have to charge it a little bit, but I say for $50, we'll send a technician out to you. We'll set the machine up. We'll move all your data over to it. We'll have a server that you can use, and it'll be up in the cloud. We call them a cloud server. Put a cloud server up for you. You'll be able to use them for a little bit, and then when you're done, you let us know, and we shut it off, and you go back to your machine. And we had a medical organization. They tried it, and they go, this is so much faster than our actual box. How much would it be to buy one of those servers? So we priced them out a server, and she looks at the quote and she goes, well, geez, I mean, at the price you're charging it, because it's not, we just bill them the monthly fee. And she goes, well, for the price of what you're quoting me, we could just rent the server from you for 2 years before we would even break even. Yeah. And she goes, and really, wouldn't that be nice to upgrade the server every year? And I'm like, what the thing is, honestly, daily they're making upgrades and changes to that stuff. Like
that's part of what the monthly service goes towards.
So they kept it, and so they've been with they don't know that it's DigitalOcean, but they've been with DigitalOcean for over a year. Yeah. And of course we maintain all that stuff. So if they ever they want changes made, stuff like that, we handle all of that. All they know is they pay their fee. They pay a little bit to DigitalOcean.
And think about it, dude. Like if you ended up scaling it out to like dozens and dozens of customers, you could see a lot of use cases for that API. Like you could start automating.
Well, and the nice thing is DigitalOcean lets me move from clients. I can export those droplets out. So, for example, I had one client that they wanted control of that. They said, we would like to have that. I said, no problem. And so we were able to move that over, and it worked out really well. And I'm going to show you actually as we get to our app pick, some really cool ways that you can really speed up if you have a lot of droplets. A way that you can manage those remotely through SSH.
Ooh. And then of course at the network here, we'll use DigitalOcean as our go-to data center infrastructure. So when we have a project that requires back-end services, I am never going to again buy another computer and put it up here at the studio and set up a server. Yeah. I will never do that again. Instead, I just spin up droplets. Like for example, the IRC bot, the JBot JBot is like it's like another person in our chat room. It answers questions. It tells you about the schedule. It collects votes for titles. It has quotes. It does all of these things.
Soon it might be turning on and off the lights.
He's not joking. And it runs off a DigitalOcean droplet, or our GitHub bot runs off a DigitalOcean droplet. Like you need to build something, we put it on a DigitalOcean droplet, and you can too. So go over to DigitalOcean.com, use the promo code LASTDigital. You can use it for testing. They have hourly pricing too, or put it in full-time production like we do. DigitalOcean.com! And a big thank you to DigitalOcean! And for you guys using the promo code LASTDigital for supporting the Linux Action Show. Now, Noah, you and I are fans of like amassing really important data and squirreling it away and maybe even encrypting it in like a tomb or a vault. And like, I have now put this in the vault. I am storing it there. Yep. But I need to be able to get to it at any time from any of my machines, preferably over my network if possible. Right. And, these Mac users. Yeah. And I don't know about the Windows guys, but I know like the Mac users, they have like this program called Disk Utility, and they can make these DMG files, and they're like these arbitrary image files. They can just stuff stuff in and unmount and remount it.
That's exciting.
It's neat, but it's not all that fancy. And I think we can get fancy.
Let me tell you something. We can do that on Linux.
That's right, we can.
So
that's our app pick this week.
What we're going to talk about is fallocate, and that is a utility that's built in into your Linux GNU/Linux distro. But what it's going to allow you to do is create a file that you can essentially use as a hard drive. So, for example, I am in my last 367 folder, and I'm going to make a 100 megabyte file called last.img. So if I look, I have a last.img.
And you could call it anything. .img is just so you know it's an image file.
Right.
Really.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. And I use. And I'm doing this 100 megs. You could make it 100 gigs if you want. Now, the important thing to remember is the actual files. the actual file size of the what do you
and you could do sh if you want to make it readable, or
Human
-h,
readable.
human readable. So there you go.
So it's actually occupying 100 megs of your disk space, which is so you want to keep that in mind, right? If you create a 50 gig file and you have 120 gig solid state, it's going to be a bad day. But
it'll eat it.
I can open up my disk utility now. And I can go up here to the attached disk.
Ooh. Now
And-
hold on.
Yeah, sure.
Let's pause right here, because this is kind of cool. This is the kind of newer GNOME disk utility.
Right.
This is sort of one of this is comparable to disk utility on that Mac platform.
Right.
And you are using this graphical environment to mount this image file. So
Yeah,
you're not using any command. You used fallocate to create the image file.
Right.
But you're not using any command line tools now to mount the image file or format it.
So the way I would look at it is I might create this for an end user.
Yeah.
And then from there,
Yeah.
actually I'd probably do the initial formatting, but basically everything after this is designed to be done as a user. So I have
And
a
so
strong
at this point, it's a blank image file. It's no file system.
Right. In
Okay.
fact, really, it's just really all I've done is simply allocated a file and given an extension.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say was I have a strong belief that in a desktop environment, I should be able to do everything from the GUI. In a server environment, I don't mind dropping to the command line, but I don't like having to tell users to go to the command line.
Yeah,
if
for
they don't
end
have to.
users, that you do kind of get lost in the weeds when that happens.
So I'm going to attach this image file. And the really important thing is uncheck this setup read only thing. If you don't uncheck that, you want to actually be able to write to it.
Now
That's
hold
kind
on.
of a problem.
Okay, so setup read only. Oh,
Yeah,
and that's
so
down in the open file dialog
Yeah,
box.
so you're going to
Okay,
uncheck that, make sure
Okay.
that's not checked.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go ahead and click attach. And what that's going to do is it's going to attach that, and it shows up now as if I just plugged in an unformatted USB drive.
Very good.
Okay. So I'm going to go over here just like I ordinarily would, and I'm going to create a boot record. I'm going to go ahead and use MBR. Click format.
You
click
could do
format.
GPT. Is that
Could
that's
do
your other
GPT,
option?
right?
Okay.
So, and now I'm going to go ahead and create a partition. Now, I could just create an extended for partition. I could do a fat partition. I could do NTFS if I wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go down here and choose Lux.
Okay.
So this is going to do an extended for partition with wrapped inside of an encryption.
So the disk utility is going to erase the drive. It's going to use you're going to use extended for with Lux.
Right.
And disk utility is doing all of that. Now, is it going to ask you for like a passphrase?
Right. So if you notice here, the first thing is it's asking me for my name. So I'm going to call it my secret files.
Nice.
Or actually, no. Here. System files.
yeah.
That's what you title.
Yeah.
That's what you title bad stuff.
Not porn.
Yeah. Right. And so we're gonna create a password here, very secure. And so it asked me for the password. I click create.
And it gives you a strength indicator too, which was apparently pretty weak.
So now it has created it. What it's done is it's gone through. It's formatted my quote unquote disk.
Yeah.
It has created my encryption. It
Yeah.
has formatted the underlying partition. Now what it wants to do is it wants to unlock it. So,
And so it's prompting you for the passphrase for
Passphrase
the
I
Lux
just said.
encryption. And
so now that I have decrypted it, now if I
Click in the
mount
little
that
gear
in-
there.
yeah.
Yep.
And so now essentially what I have is I have this little drive that pops up.
Yep.
So I can create a folder.
and it just opened right up in Nautilus, and now
Test.
you're creating a folder in this image file.
Yeah. And now maybe what I'll do is I will where does it
You can hit the mount command. It'll tell you. It's and then
run? Is it media?
usually media. Yep, and then kernel Linux. There you go. You
System
got
files.
it.
All right.
You got
so
it.
let's do this. Let's
There's your
go
test folder.
Test, and let's do file 1, file 2, file 3.
Yeah.
So here I've got some files, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to eject this out, and I can go into my last 367. I can take this image file. And I should probably go into the disk and unmount it. But what I could do now is I could email that to you.
Oh, beautiful.
And you could
I would have
attach
all
it,
those.
and you'd have all my files. Or what I've done.
You could even zip it. And if you wanted to, you could even zip it.
tar.jizz it.
Yeah, you could.
So what I've actually done is I've actually started to put that on my file server. And the nice thing about that is any computer from the house then, I can attach
Yeah.
that over the network and put my files inside of an encrypted container. And as soon as I mount that, boom, it's done. Now, the other thing you can do, Chris, you could actually take and put your Thunderbird and do all of your emails and stuff like that and have all those in storage.
Right.
So the NSA comes and takes my laptop.
Right.
I can still boot up. I don't have to worry about that. But all of my emails, any of the important data, that's all encrypted.
What this basically does, and the reason why I dig it quite a bit, is it gives me the number one functionality that I got out of TrueCrypt, and that was TrueCrypt.
Yes.
I would create a volume. I would encrypt that volume. I would mount and unmount it. And now, what I like about this solution is you're using fallocate really to just allocate the file in the file system. system. The real magic, if you want privacy, is happening with Lux.
Yeah.
And for me, Lux is the safe bet for Linux users. They want
Yes.
file system encryption moving forward. I think if you're going to bet on a horse, you bet on the Lux horse.
Right.
And so the fact that, you can use the disks utility to easily use Lux encryption and format the thing, and it makes it you're essentially using several tools together to make a really nice TrueCrypt replacement that's just using built-in Linux technology that isn't going to go away because it's fundamental to the operating system.
And you know what's great about that? When I install my laptop, no more am I going out to a site, downloading this file, running the .sh file, all that crap. And the other thing is too, before, and this you might have to go back a little ways to remember this, but there was a time that TrueCrypt didn't really work on Linux. It was RealCrypt, I think was what it was.
You're old school, man.
Well, and the problem with that was you had to run it as root to get the program to run, but then it would mount all your files as root. So
as
then
root.
you couldn't open VLC.
Yeah.
So
you're either chowning everything or you're running everything as root, and every time you mount it,
it's just a problem.
Yeah.
The nice thing about this is I install TrueCrypt Crypt setup, and actually, Wimpy was explaining to me that in Ubuntu 14.04 and Mate 14.04, Crypt setup is actually there. It's actually installed, but it's just something is broken, so you have to reinstall it when you set up your computer. But for the most part, like when I did my Fedora, all I did was plug my thumb drive in or this file, and boom, I can decrypt my files. I don't need anything special.
That's nice.
Here's what's great about that: I can do an offline installer, have an offline machine, and I can read my encrypted files without it ever being connected to the interwebs.
That is sweet. That's super secure. So you might have picked up both Noah and I are running Fedora 22 for today's episode of the Linux Action Show. We're doing the review on Fedora 22, so this demo was just done on Fedora 22. So if you're running Fedora, it's easy to do, but it's easy to do it on any distribution. Now, we got two great meetups coming up for the Jupiter Broadcasting audience that I want to tell you about before we get to our weekly spotlight. And the weekly spotlight is also great for security, and it's something Noah uses all the time. But first, I want to tell you about Learn About Open Tech. It is a meetup that's being put on by Corky and Popey, and it is in London. It is not in the United States at all. We're getting one where these guys on their own initiative said, "Hey, can we do a meetup with the JB fans in our area?" Hell yeah, you can, guys. That's awesome. So Popey is the event organizer, he's the event host. Open Tech is running again on Saturday, June 13th, and in the Student Central. It's in London on Mullet Street, not Mullet, but Mallet Street, I think. So meet up during the event. You can find out more at opentech.org.uk/2015. But go to meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. If you're in the London area and you want to meet up with fellow Jupiter Broadcasting fans and learn about open tech, this is the place to do it. Popey, who's often on Linux Unplugged, will be the host, and that is on Saturday, June 13th. So very soon.
All right.
Not this weekend, but next, which is during Self. And if you're going to be at Southeast Linux Fest during that same time, meet up with Noah. He'll be at the Charlotte Hotel doing Southeast Linux Fest, Charlotte in North Carolina. And you can meet up with Noah there. You can find out more information about hotel details and address and timing at meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. So both events are being hosted at meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. The one in London to learn more about open tech, and Southeast Linux Fest happening in Charlotte, North Carolina. Both of them on the June 12th and on June 13th. So Self starts on Friday, the June 12th, and Learn About Open Tech starts on Saturday, June 13th. And Popey is often in the IRC chat room. If you have any questions and want to ping him, I'm sure he'd try to answer as many as he can, but no promises. I'm throwing him under the bus on that one. So meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting for both of those. I hope you guys love them. Now, our spotlight for, we like to feature an open source project or a product that works really great with Linux or something that might make your life a little better.
Right.
And I know a lot of you are very security conscientious, and Noah's in a position as a contractor for IT. He's constantly dealing with lots of different passwords. He's got to make his own passwords very secure. We talk about things like LastPass and KeyPass and all that kind of stuff. Something that we've made passing mention to but not given a lot of attention to or time is YubiKey.
YubiKeys. So what YubiKeys is it's a very, very open hardware platform for token-based physical security authentication. So let me give you a quick example. The idea between two-factor authentication is kind of the same thing like your debit card. Something you have and something you know. You have your debit card and you know your PIN. If you possess both of those things, you have access to your money. We need to be able to replicate that on Linux. And so the nice thing about... So when I go to manage servers, a lot of times I'm working for a company that they have a server, but they don't actually allow me to, they're not going to allow me to put in a central authority to manage SSH keys, right? Because they're going to say, no, listen, you give us your public key, we'll add it to our server. Well, that becomes a problem because if you understand how asymmetrical and symmetrical
crypto works,
yeah, right. What you don't want to copy SSH keys. So once you do the SSH keygen, you leave that on that laptop, and if that laptop ever gets formatted, or if you ever go to a different laptop, you need to generate yourself new SSH keys. For me, that's a problem. I change laptops about every time the wind changes direction.
He's not joking either.
And so I have routinely about 40 to 50 servers I have to get into on a monthly basis. For me to go through and generate an SSH key and then propagate that across all 40 computers is literally, probably not exaggerating, about a day job.
Ooh, I love the NFC with the smartphone.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So what? There are three things that the YubiKey does. It has U2F, universal two-factor authentication. It has a one-time generated password, or an OTP, and it also has a smart card interface.
Wow.
So I want to talk about the smart card interface if I could first.
Yeah.
What this allows me to do. So I'll bring up a terminal here. And if you'll notice, when I go to, let's see here, I will SSH into our chat server that we use for
AutoSpeed?
Yeah, for doing Jitsi every week.
So
I'm going to go try and SSH into that. What it tells me is, nope, sorry, can't log in. Doesn't even give me the option to enter a password, just kicks me out and says, nope, no SSH key found. I'm not going to let you in.
This is, you know what, and the reason why that's lovely is how is somebody going to brute force your password if you're not even getting that far? It can't happen. It's not going to happen.
This is my lanyard, my ID card, and my key for the building, and I have a YubiKey on it. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to put it into my laptop.
Okay. So he's putting it in the USB port.
All I've done is plugged it in.
Yep.
I'm going to run the same command, okay? Now it's going to read my YubiKey and prompt me for a PIN to unlock my YubiKey. I get 4 attempts to do this correctly. After that, YubiKey is destroyed.
What?
Yeah.
YubiKey?
I mean, not destroyed, but
it.
the key is corrupt and there's no more using it. So you have to regenerate a new SSH key onto here.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to enter in very carefully. I'm going to enter my PIN.
Yeah, I would suppose so.
And now I'm in. Now I'm logged into my server.
Nice.
Okay. Now it gets better, Chris. It gets better.
Do you want to clear? I don't know if there's anything on the screen you don't want to show.
No.
Okay.
This is. It's great because I can take it with me everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's a pain because if I'm sitting on my laptop, which is 90% of the time where I'm doing my work,
all the time,
I don't want to carry this thing around and then it's on my neck. And I hate the lanyards that have the little "I don't want to strangle you" thing because then they always come undone.
Yeah.
So I had this Mozilla Firefox one doesn't have that. Problem is I'm leaning over trying to plug it in.
Oh, that's got to be awkward.
YubiKey, they have me covered. They have this tiny little thing, and I don't know if you can see.
Oh my gosh!
It
looks like the size
of my thumbnail. Is what it is.
It looks like the size of a SIM, and I think, here it is. Look, here's for those of you watching the video version. We do have a close-up of it. You can see it's so tiny, it barely even fills the USB slot.
So, and you can look, Chris. I mean, you've seen it before, right? You don't even notice it's there until you hit it.
Yeah.
So without that in, we saw what happens, right? So now my lanyard is sitting right here. I don't have that in the computer, but I'm going to run the same command, and what it's going to do is.
And now this is using the micro one?
This is using the nano. And again, prompts me for my PIN. I enter that PIN, and now I'm logged into my server. So essentially, if I have my laptop, I can access all 40 of my servers with just my PIN. Now, here's where it's great. I switched for the Fedora 22 review. I didn't change a thing. All I did was unplug my Nano from that Asus ZenBook I had last month and plugged it into the System 76 I have this month, and now, boom. All access to all 40 servers. Because all the YubiKeys never give up the private key, it's never actually extracted from the device. It's perfectly secure for me to assume that if this ever gets lost, I can void that key and I'm done.
Okay.
But there's no problem moving it from one computer to the other because it can never be duplicated.
And do you also use it in conjunction with like LastPass as the master key?
That was the next thing I was going to get to. So if I open up my web browser, one of the things that I do is I'm using LastPass, right? Problem with LastPass is if you use LastPass just with a password, it's almost less secure than not using LastPass at all.
Unless it's some amazing password. But even then,
if somebody compromises that one password, not only do they have access to all your accounts, they know which accounts you have because it has a vault.
Here's what my solution to that was I implemented two-factor and I used Google Authenticator.
Great.
So that's one way.
But the problem with two-factor authentication, at least with Google Authenticator, is you always have to have your phone next to you. right?
Yeah, and it's a pain in the butt if I switch phones and forget to add a new device and deactivate the old device. I'm so boned.
So let's take a look. So let's do 2 demos. So let's go ahead and I'm going to log into. Well, maybe we can't do the second one, but I'm going to go ahead and log into. I'm going to go open my browser.
Hold on now. So this is LastPass prompt, and LastPass is YubiKey aware. So it even shows a YubiKey icon.
Let's do this. Let's pretend I logged out of my browser altogether.
Okay.
The first time I open it, the first thing it's going to do is ask me to log in with my password.
Yeah.
So again, 2-factor authentication. Something I have, something I know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and type in my password, and I'm going to hit login.
Okay.
But before it'll actually let me log in, it prompts me for my YubiKey. Now all I have to do is touch the YubiKey. And YubiKey signs me into LastPass. Now, here's where it gets great, Chris. That is a one-time password generator. So what it's doing is it's actually sending a series of a random string that authenticates against YubiKey's server. So the great thing is, if I were to sign into your computer, like, you know how we had this problem here when we walked in? All I would have to do is take my thumb drive or my YubiKey, plug it into that computer, push the button, and I'd be signed into LastPass. I don't no more waiting for this.
And so you don't have to worry about your operating system drivers because it shows up as a human interface device?
It shows up as a keyboard. So it works on Windows, it works on Mac. I can use it on my Android phone. They have the ability to just touch it to the back of the computer.
I saw that. So and that must be using. So when you're doing it to the back of the computer, they must be using NFC for that.
Yes.
Which makes complicated passwords on your phone so much more straightforward.
Right.
Yeah. Here she is using her Nexus 5. She taps the YubiKey to the back of the Nexus 5, and it does the authentication.
Now again, with the Nano, it's making everything amazing for me because what's happening is I'm not taking this off my neck. And there is one detractor that you have figured out.
You touch it all the time.
Yeah, right. So for example, I'll give you an example. If I'm in the chat room and I just bump the side of my computer, what's going to happen is it generates that one-time password and then hits enter.
Yeah, so,
which means if you're in the middle of a form, you've submitted that form. If you're in the chat room, you've submitted a bunch of garbage.
And quite literally, depending on where the one, and this is such a minor thing, but depending on where your USB ports are located on your computer, like your laptop, if the USB ports are where you put your hand, you'd sometimes tap this YubiKey and it begins inputting a bunch of random strings. Like you can see kernel Linux did there, CCC, whatever it is, whatever there. Yeah.
But the thing is, this has fundamentally changed a key part of my life when it comes to security because when it really comes down to it, when it really boils down to it, if I have a choice between security and convenience, for me, convenience means time. Time means money. Money means more toys and more food on my table. So I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of security.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah,
a couple of things that jump out at me. I noticed you mentioned that it pings the YubiKey service to generate the numbers.
Yes.
So first question is how dependent am I on YubiKey servers? And second question is how much of this is open and documented?
So everything is open and documented. YubiKey actually gives you the code to, and again, I'm not a developer, so grain of salt. But the way I understand it, YubiKey actually gives you the code for what they're running on their server. So if you want to spin up your own YubiKey server, you can do that. The problem you're going to run into is LastPass has structured their program to authenticate against YubiKey servers.
So they'd have to make a change.
But, so for instance, Google has done this. They have they've implemented their own authentication thing. So they use YubiKeys, but it's never touching YubiKey server. It only authenticates against their own system.
They rolled their own.
Right.
So, and I assume this must work when you don't have a Wi-Fi connection or a network connection.
Absolutely.
You can still use the YubiKey.
Absolutely.
So even if it can't ping the YubiKey servers, you can still use it.
Well, the one-time password thing, you're going to have internet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But the smart card interface, absolutely.
That makes sense. So if you're using the smart card interface as a login authentication mechanism, you can be offline. Of
course.
If you're using the one-time password for LastPass, chances are you're probably online anyways if you're using LastPass.
Well, yeah, so that's just it, right? Is that in order for one-time password to work, it has to reach out to the server to say, is this code valid or not? So I'll show you another thing.
You could, though, just interrupt. Like if you wanted to use it with KeyPass, you could just have a really crazy, like paragraph-long password that you could just use the YubiKey to enter for you as a human interface device for any password manager or for anything, right? You could use it to like supply a crazy-ass password to KeyPass.
Yeah, in fact, actually, they actually have when you open the YubiKey Nano configure, the tool will allow you to set. I can enable one-time password. I can do smart card. I can do the U2F, or I can set a static one. I can set a static password. So every time it will just keep generating the same password. So I can have 128 character alphanumeric, all these characters, and it will remember that, and then I can spit it out every single time. But again, the problem I have with that, the big problem I have with that, somebody steals my YubiKey, the game's over because they can just plug that into my computer.
The one-time
and push
thing
the button.
is nice.
The one-time password is nicer because it generates every time. Yeah.
Look at this. So here it is right here. If you don't want to use the YubiCloud, you can host one of these validation servers yourself.
Right.
And look, here's one's built by YubiKey, and here's one's built by others right on their website.
So the company that is doing, and I know that somebody watching the show, if it hasn't been brought up already, somebody is going to bring this up, that there was a security flaw in the
validation stuff?
somewhere a couple weeks ago there was some big hoopla hoopla. They got it fixed, but the reality is these are the kind of companies that I can trust because they are so transparent and open about what they're doing that, does stuff come up? Yeah, stuff comes up, but it gets fixed right away.
Yeah, and this is, even with that vulnerability and them fixing it, it's probably way more secure than not having it.
Yeah.
So there's that. So it's a YubiKey. I've got one, but I definitely want that small one. You've got me off my butt. And now that they have NFC too, game changer for my phone.
I have just gotten to the point where I honestly believe that I get an immense amount of security with almost no inconvenience. I mean, I don't even think about it. I reach over, I whack the side of my computer, and I'm logged into LastPass. It's great.
That is really nice. Yeah. So you can find these picks as well as our past picks at jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks. We have a directory there of all of our previous picks. Like I say from time to time, if you're setting up a new rig or a new mobile phone, check that site. Best of the best is on that site.
Let me drop back. One last thing I wanted to get in there. So DigitalOcean allows you to check that little box for SSH keys, and you can just add them.
Yes.
So I have Noah's laptop and Noah's lanyard as SSH keys. So it's great. I spin up a DigitalOcean droplet, Chris.
You're ready to go.
I can SSH in immediately without, they never email me anything. I don't have to wait. I just, boom, because it's on my laptop.
Damn, that is cool.
Yeah,
Damn, that is cool.
It's slick.
All right, so I'm going to have to get one. You sold me, Noah.
All right.
You sold me.
That's good.
All right, check out our picks at the past picks, jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks. Noah, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Go to last.ting.com. That'll give this show some credit, but also even better, it's going to give you a $50 credit on your first Ting device or service credit if you have a Ting-compatible device. And there's lots of them because they have CDMA and GSM coverage. $50, you guys. That ends like at the end of June, though. Mm-hmm. $50. I'm trying to put that because $25 was a pretty big deal because $25 paid for more than my first month of Ting service.
Right.
So $50
knocks off it's either a serious discount on the phone, or what I would do, I'd throw 25 of that towards the phone, 25 of that towards a free month of service.
Well, and the thing is what I like about knocking some price off that phone is you're buying an unlocked phone too, so that's great. Now, that's a device you really truly own, so you're legitimately taking price right off the front of that device. That's cool. So what is Ting and why is it different? Well, Ting is my mobile service provider. It's Noah's mobile service provider. Pretty much the whole JB Crew's mobile service provider because it's mobile that makes sense. And I'm not trying to brag, but we're kind of clever around here. And when we see a good deal and a good idea, we embrace it. And that's Ting. Here's why I like it. No contract, no termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. Ting takes your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes, and they add them up, and whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you pay. It's a flat $6 for the line. So Noah, you've got over there.
Right. So I've got a couple devices. Now, one of the things, Chris, that I've noticed is people, they don't, it takes a little bit to get your mind out of comparing Ting to other mobile service providers. And so what, for example, you get people that they'll say, Ting says they give 2,000 minutes, and I get X amount of minutes from Verizon, Sprint, whatever, for a lot less money. But you have to look at how you use your phone and what you actually use. So, for example, I don't even think about how many minutes I have. I just use the phone whenever I want to use the phone.
This is what I love.
As much as I want to use the phone.
Because if I use it for 100 minutes, I pay for 100 minutes. And if I use it for 500 minutes, I pay for 500 minutes. And it's all really straightforward and simple. And something the other guys don't have that Ting has is the dashboard is like 100% legit. Like it gives you like fuel gauge, kind of like heads up of where you're at in your minutes. Anybody can understand that.
So one of the things that I wanted to do was my son he's 4 years old and he likes to talk to dad and do these kinds of things. And so for $6, I can give him a phone. It's not a problem. But I don't want him to make a phone call and then just set the phone down and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so all I do is we limit it to a couple hundred minutes and then after that, shuts the phone off. Or I can set it to, hey, just send me a message and let me know we're kind of appreciating. I have
and
voicemail
if you get the Ting app, they'll do push notifications too.
Right. I have of course I have the Ting app.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So, but I can shut off data, I can shut off text messaging, and I can shut off his numbers. So if he's calling, other people or whatever, then I'll call back and go,
And think you're using it as a dad, which is a very good use case, but as an employer, I can use that like we have when we have producers that are working on a specific project on location, we can give them a Ting phone and be like, this is your dedicated JB Bat line. If this rings, it's me.
Yeah.
And then when they're done, I go into the Ting dashboard and I just turn the phone off.
Right.
And it doesn't cost me anything at all.
Right. Or did you know what you can do is you can send a message to Ting and say, hey, here's what I want to do. I want you to move this phone number because let's say producer XYZ wants to keep his phone. They'll move that over and then he can keep a service and no interruption. Then he just starts paying for it.
We did that with our nanny when we first got a nanny. We gave her a phone through Ting because that's the best way to do it. And then when she was no longer our nanny and she left, we let her keep the phone and we just transferred it off.
So now, and Ting wants wants you to save money. And so to that end, they show you all these tips on how to use your phone a little bit more tech savvily. So for example, I make a lot of my calls through IP. And the advantage that I have is if I'm at a client location, always have internet. If I have my office, I have internet. If I'm at home, I have internet. If I'm here, I have internet. So why would I want to be using those minutes And so where you have to make that comparison is if you're going to say, this big box store gives me X amount of minutes for X amount of dollars, you have to ask yourself, if you're using the phone, if you're using the phone intelligently, like I'm using IP when I can, why would I want to pay for those minutes that I'm not even using?
If you're even like a little savvy, you realize that prepaid set of minutes is kind of a gimmick. It's kind of a scam. And if you go to Ting, go to last.ting.com, you can try out their savings calculator, and you put in your actual usage, how much you actually end up using, and you'll see there's a huge difference in what you can pay. I've saved over $2,000 in the 2 years I've been using Ting.
Yeah. So you use your minutes basically as like a backup, and I think that's a great way to.
I'm always doing Wi-Fi calling almost all the time, and then like the time that I'm commuting, I don't need a lot of minutes because my cellular minutes are like, that's my backup pool when I've exhausted my data calling, because I always go data calling first. It sounds better.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I want to call somebody who's sitting at a computer because they're in front of the machine looking something up for me.
Yeah.
So I want to use the system that's best for them, and that's usually a headset. And so I'm always deferring to Wi-Fi calling when possible. And I do anything. I'll do anything. Hangout, Skype, whatever. Viber, whatever. And then when I go on the road, if I need to make a few minutes call, I know that, okay, I'll use maybe a couple hundred minutes this month total, because that's my backup That's my backup methodology of calling people. Because for me, I'm aware of the apps I can use to save money.
Yeah.
Ting's perfect for that.
They tell you about it. If you didn't know, they would tell you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Chris, have you seen the movie Taken or Taken 2?
I've seen Taken.
All right, so Taken 2, Liam Neeson gets kidnapped, okay? And they're holding him in the dungeon. He has no way out. It's really dangerous. What's going to happen? He has no way to get communication out. And you know what he does? He reaches into his sock, and he pulls out this tiny little phone.
It's a miniature phone.
And calls, and he's like, hey, I need help because I have this tiny little phone. And I'm like, I want a tiny little phone for my sock.
That's where you got the idea for that?
Well, here's the thing. I can't afford to pay for a line to have a phone in my sock. That's not a practical thing to do, Chris. But guess what? When Ting rolled out GSM service, I'm like, I'm buying that.
Yeah.
So I bought this tiny little GSM phone. It is $19. You can see it's the size of my palm, and it literally fits inside of my sock or my pocket. Now, the great thing is, at night, I will shut my phone off. I'll just turn the volume all the way off or power it down completely. And what I'll do is I'll give my wife, just in case my kids get killed or something like that, I'd like to know about that. I give my wife the number for this phone, and this phone stays on. So she could call me right now and totally interrupt the show.
Yeah.
Because it's on right now, and it always is. And I set that there, but my regular phone with all these other people, I probably missed like 13 calls already. They'll just go on the wayside.
That's really cool.
And that's only possible because I can do that I can log in to set my Ting dashboard.
Couple last things before we go. Ting has now got the Galaxy S6 Edge. If you want to get that, it's a great phone. They have so Ting has now the whole spectrum available. Everything from they just added the Huawei U3900, which is an $81 feature phone, but it's like top tier feature phone. It's like a modern feature phone, but just designed to make calls. They also, Blue. You guys may have heard about Blue from some of our coverage in Tech Talk today. Blue makes some really competitive devices. They now have the Blue Studio Mini for $111. No contract, right? Unlocked. It's great. So go to last.ting.com to get started. And a big thanks to Ting. So many great ways to go. So many great options. Noah's looking at the GSM devices on eBay right now.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm getting the link for that tiny GSM phone. Every time we talk about it, somebody asks for it. And the thing is, it is not. I would love to tell you it's the XYZ model Q1 or whatever. But the reality is, it's a cheap Chinese phone. There is no make and model. It's just nice Chinese GSM phone from Hong Kong. And that's you just got to go search tiny GSM.
And then
phone.
the last thing, for those of you that are building like Raspberry Pi devices or these embedded devices and you need GSM service just to do like data reports or access a web server on the thing to see how it's doing, and you want to be able to get connectivity on these things wherever you go, keep in mind Ting is perfect for this because you can get a $9 SIM card that goes on the GSM network, and then you're just going to pay when that device uses the data. So like my buddy Chase is using it now for his security camera system so he can check on it remotely. He doesn't need to pay a monthly bill for that when he checks it once a week from his phone or something. Right. So there's a lot of, when you start realizing that essentially what Ting is doing is they're democratizing GSM. They're allowing you to take a GSM SIM on a large, widely growing network and popping in any device you want and paying for what you use. And for us Linux users and open source enthusiasts that need to get data connectivity on some of these devices, I think Ting is a perfect fit. And I implore Ting and I encourage them to explore this space, but there's no reason Ting has to do it. You guys could do it too. And it really enables this. It's just flat $6 for the line, and you're just paying for your usage. And then you can take that $9 GSM SIM and put it in these devices. And to me, I think that's going to open up a ton of possibilities. So I hope those of you out there take advantage of that. And if you do, send it into the show. All right, thanks. Linux or last.ting.com. Thanks to Ting. Now, Noah, we on Linux Unplugged sort of took a nostalgic look back at our use of Mandrake and Mandriva. On Tuesday, it came out that the company behind Mandrake and Mandriva was filing for bankruptcy and dissolving. For a lot of us, Mandrake was the first Linux, and we covered a lot of that in Linux Unplugged. So if you want to hear that, there's some great stories talking about the installer and stuff.
Yeah.
We got some emails too where people were like totally nostalgic with us. It was really cool. So let's talk about some of the details that we think led to the bankruptcy for Mandriva. It looks like Mandriva was struggling with potentially employee lawsuits. Now, the company wasn't generating a lot of revenue in 2013 and 2014, somewhere around 600,000 USD for the whole year. But in 2014, they managed to get revenues up to about 40%. Costs were down about 60% because they'd done some layoffs. Well, those laid off workers sued the company, and they won. So because they won, Mandriva had to pay out like a couple €100,000 to these employees. And they're claiming that after this payout, they just didn't have the money to keep it going. And with the lawsuit and all of that and the revenues down, they just kind of had to dissolve rather quickly. So I can't tell if this is this guy, the CEO, Jean-Manuel Corset. I'm not sure if this is him trying to defer the blame onto the employees and be like, man, I had a solid plan. I was going to turn this thing around, but then those damn employees, if those meddling employees hadn't gotten me and sued me, then I would have turned this thing around. But because they sued me, I'm shutting it down. Or is it legitimately, we had to do some cost cutting. We had to make some hard decisions. And you know what? Had to crack some eggs. And those guys got upset that we had to crack eggs, but that's business. And now we're screwed. Which one do you think it is?
So I would love, because it's a Linux project, obviously never want to see anything bad happen to a Linux project. So my natural inclination is to say, kind of sucks. That who goes to work for a Linux company that doesn't want the Linux company to succeed?
Right.
And then
and Linux as a whole, and desktop Linux, and of course your project is a big part of that.
God forbid we ever parted ways, right? I would never want ill will to come to Jupiter Broadcasting because you do so much for the Linux community. So I feel like that would cross my mind as an employee of a Linux company, like, hey, if we sue them, or if we, especially, it sounds like it was a class action lawsuit, if we're all going to sue them and we're going to bleed them dry, there's in a lot of businesses, I think employees want to hear or want to think that they are so valuable to the company that if they leave, the company's going to go out and they just won't be the same without me. So in some ways, that's kind of rewarding. But at the same time, you'd think that somebody who's working for a Linux company would kind of want that the project to succeed with or without them.
Your argument is perhaps their advocacy for the Linux platform would override their need to eat?
Well, my advocacy for the Linux platform would override my need to be right with the company and settle the score, so to speak. They're going to find a job somewhere else, so it's not like they're not going to have money to eat.
I follow you there.
So, but I think what it comes down to is we have to realize that when people have those civil disagreements, they have to have a way to work those out. And so what that means is they sue the company, and obviously went through the due process, and what they found was that there was they was found legitimate, right?
Here's the thing. Let's just I don't know, let's play a game. Let's say the legal system worked and due process was had and these employees were rightly awarded their fair share. Let's just make that assumption that we can trust that was the right process. If that is true, or even has hints of truth to it, I am of the personal opinion, it is undeniably debaggy for this guy to come out and say this. If your company's screwed anyways, you don't gain anything. You're not fixing anything. So just don't say anything.
Even if it is true, what does he have to gain? That's true. That's true.
So I feel like regardless, that's not a very good move. But it's sad to see it burn because, they fought the good fight for a long time and brought a lot of us here. So we owe them that debt of gratitude. And I wish I could say the same about frickin' SourceForge. I wish I could sit here on this show and be like, SourceForge has contributed so much to the community. It has made free software available to so many people for so long. But instead, I have to sit here and tell you how much they screwed up. So SourceForge has grabbed the GIMP for Windows account and is wrapping the GIMP for Windows installer with adware. That's right. And I loved their defense, too. In a blog post that was posted shortly after Ars Technica started writing up about this, the GIMP project was like, bro, look, this project was abandoned over 18 months ago, and we just wanted to step in and keep it current.
Oh, okay. So then they updated some features in GIMP then.
Yeah. Yeah, they submitted some patches.
They submitted some patches. They went through and updated the documentation.
They submitted some bugs.
Yeah. Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
No, apparently they've also done this to the Apache Foundations projects, including Derby, Directory Studio, the Apache HTTP server, HardOP, OpenOffice, Subversion, the Mozilla projects, including Firefox, Thunderbird, and FTP, FireFTP have been touched. Evolution and OpenExchange email clients have been touched by these guys. They've been doing this to a lot of projects for a while now, and what they do is what they have done, and this is particularly egregious in my opinion, Noah, is in the case of the Windows GIMP maintainer, they revoked his account access and gave their own account access to it.
Yep.
And then started doing this.
Well, that's
and
because
end users have no idea. Yeah.
Because it wasn't like he had contributed just a couple weeks ago.
That was the other thing. They said it hadn't been updated for 18 months, but yet the patches and the contributions, and not only that, but he was actively working on something about to make a big submission.
Right.
And the thing was, SourceForge just wasn't simply the primary distribution platform. So on other sites, there was activity happening, but this was one of many because, honestly, it's a nice service to be able to distribute the downloads.
And the thing that sucks about it is as a user, when I download GIMP and I go to install it, I'm like, what the heck is this GIMP crap? They bundle this adware with GIMP. I don't like GIMP.
Thank you. I want to double down on that point because what really upsets me is it gives open source a bad name. It gives, it's not really free software because it includes all that adware. SourceForge is literally damaging the reputation of free software to what I would consider to be the most important audience, and that is potential switchers. Because what do we say on this show all the time? When you want to make Windows users switch to Linux, start them with Firefox, LibreOffice, and GIMP on the Windows desktop. Get them acquainted with that, and then when they move to Linux, all of those same applications are available. Their workflow isn't disrupted.
Right.
And now we say that, and they download the GIMP for Windows, and they get ads. Holy shit, that's a bad story.
Right. Yeah, it is, and and the reality is, I don't quite understand the legality of open source enough to understand why it is they can do that. How is it that they don't have to submit back to the contributor, to the maintainer, and then have the maintainer approve?
I got one word for you, buddy. I bet you anything it's the EULA. When they sign up, it's in the EULA.
I suppose it is, right?
Yeah.
So do we have some other ideas then of where we could go?
Check this out. So there's this site, and we'll have a link in the show notes. Goodbye SourceForge, right?
Appropriately titled.
Yeah, it's a GitHub.io page, so it's just easier to link in the show notes. But what they've done here is a matrix of features compared to SourceForge. So where do you want to move based on what kind of project you are? And then here's a matrix to help you make the decision that's probably best for your project. And they're continuing to develop this. They're making resources available. So if you're an open source project that has kind of relied on the nice features of SourceForge, like the mirror downloads and a fairly public website and centralized search, this could be a great opportunity for you. So we'll have a link to this in the news section of the Linux Action show notes, right under the main story here. And they mainly compare GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Launchpad, a bunch of other ones. And I just want to make a double down mention for GitLab. We've talked a lot in Coda Radio. My co-host, Michael Dominic, he moved his company from hosted on GitHub to a DigitalOcean droplet using GitLab. And I don't remember exactly, he covered it in a several series of episodes, and he talked about that transition, about some of the downsides when you have remote workers and some of the social aspects and larger discovery, but he also talks about the benefits of moving to things like GitLab on this DO droplet. And that might be something that's an option for a lot of you guys out there. And honestly, with things like Google Code shutting down, SourceForge is sort of become more relevant again. So I really hope they get this crap together, and I'd love to hear the audience's recommendations. So if you go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com, we will have a feedback thread for this episode, 367. And if you could leave a comment about what you think would be a good SourceForge replacement, I'd love to see that. And maybe we'll follow up in this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. Producer Rottencorp's writes in the chat room that he says he still believes that, and wrote a blog post about why SourceForge is still the only place for binary downloads. Really? Yep. You know what? There's a blog post about it. Mr. Rottencorps, join us on Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. Or actually, we're recording Linux Unplugged on Monday this week. Monday at 9 a.m. because Noah's in town, so we figured we should probably record it. And I'm sorry, in Linux Unplugged, I'd said a different time.
Yeah.
But since Noah's in town, we want to take advantage of that. So Monday, 9 a.m., join us. Well, maybe we can get Rotten Corpse's take on that, as well as I've invited the Fedora project lead to join us to follow up on our review of Fedora today. Before we get into the Fedora review, we do have a couple more news items to get to. This one falls into the category of crap I hate to talk about, drama that doesn't need to exist, and news that shouldn't be news. All that said, people are still interested in this story. It is still very newsworthy, and it is definitely fascinating from a psychological standpoint.
What you mean to say is news that you wish wasn't news.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Kubuntu project lead has been asked to step down by the Ubuntu Community Council. And his name is Jonathan Riddle, and he's been told that his leadership of the Ubuntu community is no longer recognized by the Ubuntu Community Council, and they have asked him to step down immediately. Now, Noah, you've dug into this story a little bit, because I honestly was so adverse to this drama that I had a hard time finding the story, so I asked you to read up on it. Can you kind of summarize what happened?
Yeah, so that's fair, right? Because what you're trying to do is limit the amount of gossip that spreads. So
yeah, because we really don't care about the drama aspect, but really if an important open source project is impacted.
It's affecting. So essentially, from the best of my understanding, and again, I am getting this from the internet and from articles that were submitted to the subreddit, so all that being said, if somebody else knows more about it or is personally involved with it, I know we have some people that work for these companies and stuff, so that's my disclaimer. However, it appears what happened was this gentleman was told that he made some inquiries about the licensing and the way that it worked with Canonical, and
specifically there's some Canonical trademark terms and things like that about the redistribution of Ubuntu software and all of this that almost in a way sounds like it very much would impact the Kubuntu project.
And so we don't know. I don't think we have access to the actual questions, nor do we have access to their actual answers.
No.
They alluded to a little bit because some of that was on a mailing list.
And I have links to those in the show notes if you guys want to read up on those if you're interested.
So he asked questions and he was given answers that and the article said were unsatisfactory to him and made the people at the Canonical Community Council uncomfortable. And based on that, they stripped him, or attempted, I guess. That isn't not even really clear, because for the OMG Ubuntu article, I believe it was, actually says that they said they would like him to step down, and the Kubuntu project replied, no, we are going to stand behind him, and we believe in his leadership. Now, the thing of it is, to me, is I tend to take this guy's side.
Yeah, I mean, so what Jonathan is doing, and this is from our interpretation here, but he appears to be just asking for clarification on a policy that would directly impact derivatives of Ubuntu. And his is perhaps the most popular derivative of Ubuntu.
Right.
So he's asking for clarifications, and then I think maybe he got some of those clarifications and was like, well, wait a minute. That's not going to work. And I want to take a step back here. If you grant me that Kubuntu is maybe the most relevant and popular and largest Ubuntu derivative, I think Mate is stepping up.
Yeah, right.
But let's just grant me this, that it's been around for a while, and there's a lot of interest in Plasma 5, and this is one of the premier places to try out the Plasma 5 desktop, and these guys make a really good product. So I think it's probably one of the most relevant Ubuntu derivatives out there. That means these guys are the tip of the spearhead, right? These guys are always sort of pioneering these issues that affect all of the other derivatives. These guys are going to be the first one that smacks up against the wall that they have to communicate with Canonical. And Riddle is going to be or Jonathan's going to be the guy that is going to have to bear the brunt of that. And the thing that I am trying to wrap my head around, Noah, is I still haven't quite put together what justifies the dismissal. The questions seem to be 100% legitimate. The concern with the answer and the delay in the answer seems to be completely legitimate. So legitimate so that from what I have read, the Free Software Foundation is also very curious about these same questions and even has lawyers on hand asking to look into this. Now, I don't know how far that goes, but other people are asking questions too.
Where I don't get, and we should back up and clarify. So it was the Ubuntu Community Council, and so we want to be very clear that they're not Canonical employees. However, Mark Shuttleworth said he supported their decision. So it's not like Canonical isn't standing behind this.
I thought Mark Shuttleworth didn't support the decision.
I think he did. We can look in the article. But
you're right. So Shuttleworth does back the decision, saying that the UCC is entitled to choose who they will recognize as their counterparts.
So
can I pause you for a second?
Please.
Just because the chat room is correcting some terminology, I don't want to go too far because terminology does matter. Humi in the chat room is pointing out Kubuntu is not technically a derivative; it is a flavor.
Right.
Mint is a derivative, right? It's an offshoot. It's more of a fork. Deep in Linux, right? Whereas Kubuntu is a flavor. It is essentially
It's a blessed fork.
Well,
Is that fair?
it's straight up Ubuntu. Like you could do apt-get install Kubuntu desktop on
Yeah.
Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And you get Kubuntu Plasma 5 desktop.
Right,
It
okay.
is the Ubuntu base with a different set of meta packages on top of it.
Yeah.
So
I'm not saying that Canonical or the community council, being two separate entities, don't have the right to assert certain things. But here's how I feel that should have went. I feel like what should have happened is it made them uncomfortable. Great, we all get uncomfortable from time to time. Okay, when you make farting noises sitting next to me, it makes me uncomfortable from time to time. I let that go. Where it should have become a problem is when he actually did something or they took action that violated the Canonical's policies or the Ubuntu Community Council's policies. Then they can say, well, now we want you to step down because you violated this, that, and the other. But so far, I haven't seen anything that specifically says he's actually done anything other than ask questions.
To be clear, I do not believe that the Ubuntu Community Council is a canonical body.
They're not.
Right.
They're two
So
separate
it's not
things.
Canonical asking him to step down.
Right. Well, Canonical is supporting the community.
Shuttleworth
yeah,
is.
Right. Oh, yeah, I suppose. All right. Fair enough.
But essentially, that is taken
Well, he speaks
as
for Canonical.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. No, you're right. There should be an important distinction. I guess in my head, I guess I kind of do run those
Now,
together sometimes.
Here's why it bothers me. I want to zoom out for a minute because this is drama. We don't know the details.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume a drastic decision like this wouldn't be made lightly. Here's the problem. And I by the way, I mentioned the Free Software Foundation is looking at. I have a link to that in the show notes. Here is the issue. This is being taken very seriously by the community. There is already there's already artwork being made up right here.
Mm-hmm.
There's already a hashtag I support Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Relevant members of the Kubuntu community are stepping up and very actively voicing their concern with this on Twitter. If you go on Twitter right now, and I put a link in the show notes. If you go into Twitter right now and search for that hashtag, let's see, did I link it in there? I think I did. If you search for hashtag I support Jonathan, people are actively pissed off and discussing this right now. Like this is not going away. This is a stalemate right now too because he's not willing to step down.
I said at the beginning of the segment, and I agree. I stand by this. I tend to side with Jonathan. That said, I fully recognize and acknowledge that oftentimes, and I mean, you must know what I'm talking about when I say that there are times where one person is very, very vocal about their side of an argument, and we don't hear from the other side. That doesn't necessarily mean there isn't another side.
I do know that very well. Yes.
So I'm not saying that I'm 100% convinced that the Ubuntu Community Council is in the wrong, and that maybe he did something horrible. I'm just saying from the evidence being presented on the internet, I have nothing else to go off of. So
here's the other thing that's got me. Here's the other reason why I've kind of seen it from Jonathan's perspective. People I really respect in the community are stepping up and they're talking about how like he's so critical to the project that this could lead to a fork. He's so critical to the project that they can't continue without him.
Right.
He's so critical to the project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I loved this post that was over on Scarlett Clark's blog. As I see her writing maybe my millionth package, I wonder, why do I work so hard for free in what has become such a hostile environment?
Yeah.
For the following reasons. Jonathan, who has taught me so much and removed the barrier of entry for me. Now think about that.
Yeah.
When you have a person who single-handedly is inspiring people to spend so much of their free time to package their millionth project, or a package, and probably legitimately is their millionth package, right?
Yeah.
And you remove him, and the community council comes in and removes him.
Forcibly.
What does that do to the motivation of the community? What does that do to a community that apparently really respects their leader? I got to imagine it's devastating.
Yeah. Yeah, and you think about that too. It speaks to his character, right? That all those people are stepping up and saying, "No, listen, it's not uncommon for there to be, the person that they get power hungry, they get into the stuff, and so the people that below them, everyone wants a chance to move up. So the fact that they're all kind of stepping up and saying, yeah, I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting to see how this can impact an open source project and one that a lot of us depend on. But in the meantime, we can't get too wrapped up in the drama. We've done our coverage. We hope we give you some perspective of what's going on. It is kind of at a stalemate right now. We may follow up with it. But we really do look forward to everybody getting back and maybe writing a little code. And not that they're not, but this kind of stuff just feels like such a distraction sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of code, I'm hoping to see some code written for this ASAP. Decentralized GitHub. Now, as GitHub starts to pull down more projects, I'm starting to like this more and more. It's called GitTorrent. Git torrent. Well, we'll see about this. For practical reasons, some of us are concerned about GitHub. Maybe it gets hacked. Maybe it gets DDoS. We've definitely seen that happen. In fact, China accidentally, for those of you not familiar, China at one point accidentally DDoSed GitHub by just making a change in the Great Firewall that just crippled GitHub for a day. But then there's philosophical reasons. GitHub is closed source, so you can't make it better yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So imagine if you could take GitHub, but then distribute it over the torrent protocol.
Yeah.
Right? Decentralized frickin' GitHub.
Well,
already lines of code have been written for this.
Yeah. You know how I feel about torrents.
You get a key, and it's the repo.
Yeah. I love torrents. I think that it bothers me to no end. I wake up every morning and I'm disappointed that people see torrents as a thing to obtain illegally pirated movie software and pictures. It's just not the case.
No.
It is so much more of an effective way to transfer data from one place to another.
That's why I had so many hopes for BitTorrent Sync. Too bad they debag it up, because BitTorrent Sync was such a great system. This could be the replacement. This could be a genuine replacement for that. Now, of course, you got GitLab out there already, but what I'm loving about this is I could give you a key, and you would have you just add that to your GitTorrent setup, and you're just starting to sync down the repo.
Man, imagine how fast you were talking about how slow the Fedora repos were. Just imagine if you well, seriously though, I mean, if you have all the software and it's being hosted there, then you can pull that stuff down, have that all compiled. That's crazy.
And
cool.
Think about it, the more people that installed Fedora 22, the faster and faster and faster that would get. And you can see how that could even help the AUR too. That could be really, it could be cool. So it's called, it's going to be called GitTorrent right now. It's super early. Some promo code, some demo code, has been written if you want to check it out. And I'm really excited. If you'd like to add some news to this show or make the news even better, go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com and submit your stories. But Noah, speaking of Fedora, what do you think? Should we go do our Fedora review?
I am a Fedora user, so
you ready?
Yes.
All right, Noah, that's all the news for this week. Let's talk about Fedora 22, the latest release that builds on top of the incredibly great release that was Fedora 21. But before we get to that, I got to thank our segment sponsor, who undoubtedly played a pivotal role in today's review. That's System76. Go to system76.com, get yourself a machine that is born to run Linux. And this is why that's important. When you want to play with some Linux, when you want to try out a distribution, when you need to reload your machine and you got to get a project done, the last thing you need to worry about is that wonky video card or that crazy webcam or that thermal issue. You just want to be able to install Linux and work with your hardware. And so System76 builds these machines to work with Linux for their entire lifetime. That's why they warranty and support the Ubuntu installation for the lifetime. And they got some new machines over there. Go check out the Silverback. This is a Mac Pro killer. Apple really pulled back with the Mac Pro and made the trash can. You lose PCI Express expansion. You lose the ability to add multiple drives. You lose the ability to have multiple video. Well, you can have 2 video cards, but they're extremely expensive and extremely limited in their ATI. And you also can do much, much, much less connectivity. The Silverback workstation wants to murder the Mac Pro in the face. Look at this thing. Water cooling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 drive sleds. Super nice cooling. Large 120 millimeter or larger fans. Just an amazing system. This is truly the high-end rig you can get now. And I've priced out very different versions of this. Look at there with 3 GTX cards in there. For scientific workloads or high-end media production, this thing is a monster. But today, I got to say the Bonobo is the way to go. If you need a workstation in a laptop, something that can truly go decimate a desktop, it's not a workstation killer. No. It's on a whole nother level. Right, Noah? It's on a whole nother level.
It's on a whole nother level.
It's just a little joke.
Yeah. It's an inside joke.
It's an inside joke. In other words, you can't even compare it to a desktop killer because it's seriously up to 5 terabytes of storage in a laptop, 17.3-inch 1080p matte display, the sweet spot for the Linux desktop, the world's fastest mobile GPU and fastest CPU, a backlit keyboard with hardware-controlled color settings. The thing is a Linux champ, and that's what I ran Fedora 22 this week on. You got to go check it out. Oh man, look at that new unit. Look at that with the silver and the the backward and a look, dude. It's got 2 webcams.
He likes it so much he couldn't get by with just one.
No, we literally have 2 bonobos in studio. Now, they sent this bonobo in for us to do testing with.
Right,
I didn't pay for this bonobo, but
I
I absolutely would. The bonobo is like my go-to machine. It is
Right.
so great. We've also been running Fedora 22 on the System 76 Meerkat this week. I reviewed that in Linux Unplugged recently. Up to 2.5 terabytes of storage and something you can mount to the back of a display. You can get an i5 processor in this thing. These NUCs are straight up legitimate workstations. They got the Iris 5500 in them too. So if your graphics needs are like accelerated desktop and some Steam games, but nothing crazy, like you can play Dota on these things. You can get full GNOME 3 Mutter acceleration, and it feels incredibly fast because it has that PCI SSD in there for the main drive. So your disk I/O is nuts. It's tiny elegance from System 76.
You know what? You know what else you can do with that? You can install an Ubuntu derivative and get OBS to replace a Mac. Because I did that this week.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, you would think that computer of that size wouldn't have the power to do that, but I think at the most I had 3 separate inputs, and I was switching between them, and it was keeping up like a champ.
Yeah.
And I have a lower powered version at my house that I was able to run OBS, and it still ran on just fine. So lower than what you have here at the studio, but yeah, they're great computers, and the nice thing is they're priced affordably. So it's one of those things. If you need a smaller computer or a quiet computer, that's a great way to go.
Yes. System76.com, and a big thank you to System76 for supporting Linux Action Show. So here we are. Sitting in both of us.
On our System 76s.
Yeah. Sitting in front of our Fedora workstations. Both of us have Fedora 22. This is my machine here. We got Noah's machine over there. Whoop, right there's Noah's machine. And I've tried to keep mine pretty standard. I've made a few tweaks.
Oh, you kept yours pretty standard, huh?
Well, I kept the background the same.
Oh, okay.
I did that.
All right.
And
because mine is not standard.
No, neither one.
And I didn't make it that way either.
Yours looks really great,
looks
too.
Awesome. Looks amazing.
So Fedora 22 has a couple of big changes coming to it. First of all, I think the thing you're going to notice the most, you can't deny it, if you use the default spin, it's GNOME 3.16.
Right.
GNOME 3.16's got the new notifications, it's got the new way it does the tray icons. Since we haven't spent a lot of time on GNOME 3.16, I'd like to just take a moment and do that. First of all, the biggest change is your notifications are now in this drop-down area. Mm-hmm. And Fedora does a great job out of the box at taking advantage of this. Right where the clock is at the top, I can see I have an SE Linux security alert. Here's my 10 o'clock event. By the way, this is being pulled from my Google account.
Yeah.
The Fedora installer, after you install Fedora, it does a first-time setup, and during that first-time setup, it says, hey, man, what accounts would you like to link to your GNOME installation? So I linked my own cloud, and I linked my Google account, and when by the time I got into my desktop, I had my Google Cal events right there in my GNOME calendar.
Now, before you get too far, if you remember in the old GNOME, it would give you that little bubble that said like 1 or 2 or how many notifications. This, you just get a little dot next to the
it's nice.
the clock.
Yeah.
So it's very elegant. In fact, the first time I got that, I looked and I was like, what is that dot? And then I clicked on it and I saw notifications and I'm like, man, what a way to do it. Like,
right?
It's just enough to get my attention, but not so much that if I'm in the middle
you
of something
don't feel pressured.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about like on our cell phones, like when Telegram has like an unread notification or you got your notification LED flashing, you've got to click it.
Yeah.
But something about that, and both of you are like that.
Yep.
Both of you and I will sometimes read messages just to get rid of the notification, but not actually read the message.
Right.
And then we forget to read it all together.
Right.
But this is just a nice, subtle little dot that somehow I know something's there, but my OCD doesn't get turned on.
And if I was in my web browser and I was in the middle of doing show notes or browsing the internet, something like that, and I don't know that I would even necessarily notice that dot, but I would be cognizant to be able to look up and be like, is anything happening?
Yeah.
And that is the perfect way to give me notifications.
And what's funny is I jumped on we have a Mavericks machine in studio, and I jumped on their notifications system, and it's like this, it's the sidebar that swipes out, and it's such a mess. And I cannot follow like what happened at all. Like there's no like real way to tell what events were the one that just happened that I just saw for a second. This is done so well, and when they show up, like you can often take action. So GNOME 3.16 is total win.
Before I jump off of GNOME 3.16 too, so this I believe is a function of GNOME 3.16, but I took screenshots for you.
Oh yeah.
I was at so I was traveling here, and that was that was an event all to itself.
Yeah, it was.
So I got to the airport, and this popped up. So essentially, what happened?
Oh, you took a screenshot. So what are we? Okay,
so what happened was all I did was open my laptop up. I didn't launch anything. I didn't click on anything. I clicked on the network thing. I connected to the network, and this just pops up on my screen. So what it was there's a captive portal. If you're not familiar with what a captive portal is, it's essentially a little website that they make you visit and accept the terms before you can get onto the internet.
You see it all the time at hotels and
I have to
airports
set
and
it
stuff.
up all the time at hotels, that's another story. But so I clicked on the Get Online, and the only thing that I didn't like about it was I got to this page, okay? I was on the internet, but there's nothing on this page to tell me that I'm on the internet. Now, that's not Gnome's fault.
Now, I want to make sure I'm understanding you.
Yeah.
You're telling me you went in a network manager.
Yes.
You selected a Wi-Fi network.
Right.
And then the GNOME web browser popped up, and
I don't know what this is.
well, that's it's basically it's web GTK embedded.
Okay, so it identifies, the application identifies as network logon.
So it shows network. So this is a full screenshot you took at the time.
This is what my desktop looked like.
Yeah. So network login comes up. So
See how ugly that was?
So network manager detects that this Wi-Fi network requires captive portal login, brings up an embedded web browser for the end user to log you into it, so that way you can authenticate to the captive portal.
It was fantastic. So, but like I said, the only thing I didn't like, and again, not Gnome's fault, but I get to the end of this page, and there's nothing here that tells me I'm on the internet. Now, I am smart enough to drop down Gweg, ping Google, I'm on the internet, and so I just closed out of it. My wife would have gotten stuck here for a while. She'd have been like, how do I actually get on the internet? Because she would assume that she's in a web browser because it looks like a web page. But
that was so maybe the thing they should have done is like if they had a little piece that did a ping, and once it pings something, it closes
exactly that's what I was thinking. If it pings 8.8.8.8 and then if something happens, then it actually pulls you down. That is what I would have really liked to see.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that was an unanticipated.
That is, you are getting so close though to an experience where network manager is getting so smart. Network managers think about what they're doing behind the scenes to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Network manager must be saying, okay, I'm getting an IP, but I don't have a route. Is there something that's presenting me a URL? And then you know how this works better than I do.
Yeah.
And network manager is intercepting that and then displaying that to the end user.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and the thing was, it was so seamless. Like, I did nothing other than
connect to the Wi-Fi.
Connect to the Wi-Fi, which would be my first step. And then, we were talking the other day about I got my new requirements in for some hotels chains, and I was talking about how I didn't like some of them.
Yeah.
And we were talking about a specific requirement that would have gotten to the point where you and I would have said, maybe the internet's not even working. And the nice thing about this is, with just one little tweak, with that little ability to say, when it's on the internet, close this thing, that problem would go away. Because as soon as I see that page go away, I'd be like, I'm on the internet now.
So they're close. That means that's a polished thing that they can work out.
Is there a website that I can go to that has that will give me a login? Now, you fixed this, but when I first got
you tried to.
I don't want to do that.
So the theming. So are you talking about the theming and
I was going
to
talk global themes. Yeah.
Okay. So right before we get to that, while you set that up, I'll talk about one thing I want to mention, and this is something that I think you Arch users out there should pay attention to, is with Fedora 22. You're pretty much getting everything that's fresh. You're getting the latest GNOME, you're getting the latest Firefox, all that crap that you love, all the good stuff. Plus, now we've got Copper, which is an analog to some degree to the Arch user repository. It's not as mature, it's not as built out, but it's getting there really fast. I've installed a few packages, like a lot of my themes, from Copper. But the advantage that Fedora has over something like Arch is that singular vision that allows them to decide, this is how we are doing X now, and everything moves that direction. In Arch, you can use GNOME software, kinda, but not everything is integrated through it, like everything. So in Arch now, when you search for a package that you don't have installed, it queries GNOME software and displays it in the search results in GNOME. When you need to install updates in Arch, you open up GNOME software and you install them through there. Now, you could do all of this in Arch today, but as a project, Fedora single-mindedly moved everybody through this. So now when you download an RPM and you double-click that RPM, GNOME software updates. When you launches, when you install something and search for it in GNOME, it launches GNOME software. Every software management within the matter of 2 releases has now gone through GNOME software. Now, why is this a big deal? Because look at projects like SUSE that can't crap and get off the pot. They still have like 3 or 4 different ways for you to install software under SUSE. They're all great, and they all have a lot of logic behind them, but Fedora acts with singular vision and action. And when they deploy a new way for you to install install software, and they did it so elegantly between 21 and 22. It includes DNF and the transition from Yum to DNF,
Right.
but also at the graphical level, doing this and doing it so well, so flawlessly. Like I get an update, I get a notification, I click it, Gnome software launches. I search for something I don't have installed, Gnome software launches. I need to do something, Gnome software launches every single time. It's smooth.
Yeah,
It's so
unified.
well done.
Yeah.
It's unified.
Yeah.
And it's where I can, with Arch, I can have all of the latest packages. I can have GNOME 3.16 today, but I don't get that unification. And so as Fedora begins to work in Copper, and that gets more and more advanced, plus you've got this singular move forward where they can do things like this. They can make the changes. The Fedora project makes the changes to Network Manager to make captive portal login work. Fedora project makes the changes so that everything goes through GNOME software when you're dealing with software in a graphical environment. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't happen at the Arch level.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that you can do yourself. That's the kind of stuff I've already done. When I switch back to my Bonobo with Arch, all of my updates for Arch are done through GNOME software today.
And to be
because
fair,
I've set that up.
And to be fair, that's what that is what Arch is targeting, right? Is the people that want to do that stuff themselves. Now, one of the things, and I mentioned this on Unplugged, I think it's worth reiterating. I have been a Fedora user. I was back when Red Hat was still Red Hat, when they were using it for workstation and desktop. Before it was RHEL.
For sure.
I was, I was using 7, 8, 9, and then when they went to Fedora, I was using Fedora Core 1, and I've been on Fedora ever since. So there has nothing has happened in Fedora that I haven't personally experienced.
In fact, don't you have a rig that has been updated?
My Fedora Core 4,
like
or 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah, over and over again for like ever.
And it still runs.
Yeah.
So, but so one of the things that I was disappointed in 22 was Fedora. I don't get too bogged down about graphical stuff, making the UI look good.
Yeah.
But I know that you do. I turned on global dark themes. I think that looks. So if I show you, if I pull up my website, I think just that looks slick. When it comes up, or when last. Let me get last.
Yeah, or open up open up. Yeah, I mean, you get all these different. Yeah, the global dark. Now I turned them off on your machine though because the theming stuff isn't complete. Like
I turned them back. So I think this just looks slick. Right?
Yes,
I really like that. But here's where it was a problem, and I was happy to see that it changed. It went back to what it was doing before. You fixed this, and but now it's back. So if I type here, look at that. I can't see that text.
Right. So
I can't see that.
Open up GNOME Tweak. Let's look at your. Let's look at what. Okay.
Well, regardless of if we can fix it, this should not happen.
I agree. So now let's look at your appearance here. So let's see. You're using the your GTK plus theme is NewMix. Your icon themes is EvoPop, and here's and your shell theme is EvoPop. So something in here isn't working right. And what I don't know if because Fedora 22 is so new or what.
Yeah.
But like the Adwadia theme seems to be like almost incomplete in Fedora 22.
And it's not the theme is not Adwadia. That's the
I know, but that's what you had when you initially had that problem, and I had to turn off the global theme.
Yeah. So but you had it somehow. We had it working with dark themes.
No, I turned off dark themes.
Yeah, but we had it working though, because I remember looking, going, "Hey, now the text is in inverted."
Yeah, we could probably do it. We'd have to do a different GTK theme.
But yeah. Well, anyway, so that is one thing that if all you do is install Fedora and check the little box that says dark theme. Yeah, see now I can see, but it's not dark. If all you do is check the little box that says global dark themes, then you're not going to be able to see your text.
Basically,
to me, that's
in input fields, the text is black and the input field is black.
Right. So that somebody should fix that.
And do you think, and this is me just being a jackass, but do you think as like Mac OS introduces a dark theme as like a standard feature, does GNOME need to is Linux desktop expected?
What I think happens, I think it kind of falls.
And by the way, Windows 10 is also introducing a dark theme.
I think the progression goes like this: Mac OS introduces a dark theme. Applications that want to be aesthetically integrated into Mac OS introduce dark themes. Those applications, like Photoshop, go over to Windows and all these other platforms, and people start to expect dark themes to have the quote-unquote newer look, more sophisticated look. If you look what Rakai and I did with OBS. It's a dark theme, okay? And actually, really, if you think about it, especially broadcasting and stuff like that, it just feels cool to be darker. You look at the default. Look at the default. That just looks like crap. Yeah,
it looks a little amateurish, and also like if you're trying to set colors and stuff, it's nice to be distracted, not to be distracted by that. I can't show that screen, but
I know. I'm just, but for you, it just looks better.
I use dark themes across all my things.
So yeah, I think that's the progression. I think it starts at Mac, it goes to the applications, and the applications bring it into Linux.
Yeah, not like a CM. He hates them. He says, I hate dark themes. So not everybody.
Somebody does. Some people do. Yeah. I like them.
Okay. So pretty quickly, both Noah and I were to get pretty usable Fedora 22 installations. Here's where I think you got to go to make it totally usable. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, but there is a third-party app called Feddy, Fedy. And Feddy, I'm probably going to get a lot of junk for saying this, but I think it makes Fedora more usable. It installs codecs, but more than that, a lot of really popular software packages. I know people probably just by nature don't like the fact that you go to their webpage and they're telling you, here, execute this command as root, copy it from our website. That probably upsets a lot of people just on its very nature. But what Feddy does, Fedy, is it is a one-click option to get basically it's Fedora usable. Here, I have it up on my screen right now if you're watching the video version, and you can see at the top the Adobe Flash plugin, Android Studio, archive formats like RAR and other things like that, the Atom editor, which is a fantastic editor. And since there's some editors that aren't available for Fedora, like HaruPad, the fact that brackets and Atom is one click away is fantastic. Other things on here, Dropbox for Nautilus, encrypted DVD playback, Google Chrome if you want to watch Netflix. That's nice. Hangouts plugins. Well, a lot of us need to do that. Multimedia codecs. Oracle's Java runtime environment. Steam. Skype. Popcorn Time. Sublime Text. The GTK theme engines. WP Office. All right here in Feddy. These are all things that, in my opinion, average human beings need to make Fedora a usable desktop.
I don't know about that.
I
don't know about that. The reason I say that is because I have a couple people that I know that use Fedora on a daily basis and they don't have Feddy installed. And in fact, I didn't have Feddy installed until you installed it.
Well, now, but to be fair, do you have codecs and Flash and other things like that on those machines?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I guess, is Feddy required to install Flash now? Because I guess the last time I installed it from...
No, I'm not saying Feddy. I'm saying all the things Feddy does basically make Fedora usable.
It makes it easier.
Makes it usable. It makes it easier to make it usable.
Yeah, okay, fine.
And then, so a couple other things. Better font rendering, adding colors to bash prompt, making SE Linux more permissive, not disabling it, but just making it more permissive. Setting up your I/O scheduler for SSD drives. Setting up tap to click on your touchpad, all in Feddy. If you try out Fedora and you get a little stuck, I really want to encourage you to try this program out. Like all things, it could be a dangerous tool. But at the same time... I couldn't use Fedora without some of these tweaks, and the fact that it's all under one application makes it very nice.
Feddy is really nice, and Feddy was the only way I could find to get Numix. Not on I didn't do it on 22, but on 21, I installed. And it was the only way I could get Numix installed. So there are certainly things that I appreciate about Feddy. I'm not against Feddy in any way. I take exception to this idea that without Feddy, that Fedora isn't usable. I think Fedora is a perfectly usable operating system without Fedora.
I think without some of the things that Feddy adds, it's not very usable for most common users.
I disagree.
I think MP3 playback, Flash, and even Chrome.
You know what? If I open Rhythmbox, it just prompts me and says,
yes.
I need...
In 22 now, this is worth a mention.
Right.
In 22, it'll actually prompt you and use Gnome software to install the correct codecs.
Right. So, I mean, I'm just not seeing what I...
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It makes it a little prettier, and it makes it a little easier on the edges. And it was funny because when you were going through it, I videotaped it. I'm sure we should have queued that up. He was going through and he was installing this stuff, and he would go, "You want fonts? I do fonts. Click. You want this? I'll do that. You want TeamViewer? I can do that. Click."
Yeah,
and that was
nice.
it.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, it is really nice.
So it was slick.
Now I did have a few road bumps, not too uncommon with Fedora, and some of them I don't think will ever be applicable again. But if you're trying out 22, it's worth mentioning there are a couple of things you might run into. And you might already know this if you followed our coverage closely. One of the things that happens in Fedora 22 is GDM, the login manager, is being launched with Wayland now if you have open source graphics drivers. By default, the login manager is Wayland powered now. Now, a lot of times once you log in, you're using X again. As you might expect, there is potentially some bugs there. I ran into one. I don't know exactly why. I was using this Bonobo with an NVIDIA 7 series graphics card, but they do have a bug in their wiki. They say it affects MacBooks. It affects more than MacBooks. But if you have a Fedora installation where after the installation is completed, the live CD boots up, you go through the whole installer, everything works great, it reboots, graphical boot comes up, you see the Fedora logo, and then that goes away, and you get nothing but a black screen, or maybe the boot text, and X never starts, you probably hit the bug I hit. And I don't know if it's just with some NVIDIA cards. If it is, it's going to hit a lot of people. The fix is pretty straightforward. My advice to you, when you finish the Fedora installation and Anaconda closes, before you reboot the live environment, run the mount command in a terminal. All of the partitions that your new installation has are still mounted at this point. And you can cd into the etc directory, and you can go into etc grub, or I'm sorry, I always say that, etc gdm, and then edit the custom.conf file. So that's etc gdm on your mounted partition for your new installation. while your Fedora Live environment is still up, and you just uncomment the Wayland enable equals false stanza that's in there, when you uncomment that, it'll switch to using X for GDM, and you won't have any more problems. So this struck me. Basically, the symptom was I did my first boot. I didn't get a graphical environment. I opted to just go back in the live environment, reinstall, and then before it finished up, I was reading this. I found that. I made that fix. Never had a problem again. So that's one bug I ran into with Fedora that could impact some of you NVIDIA users. Could be a lot of you out there. The other one, at this point in time of recording, RPM Fusion repos don't have Steam. That doesn't mean you can't get it. We have a link in the show notes. Negativio17.org has steps to get Steam installed on Fedora, which I have done. I now have Steam installed on Fedora. I was able to play BioShock Infinite, Axiom Verge, and Trine 2 with my test games. Now, I always got to try Steam. Steam under Fedora 22, it works just fine if you follow the link in the show notes, and I'm sure RPM Fusion will have the Steam RPM very soon. So after I made these changes, this is, for me, I was telling you before we started the show, I could leave this machine here and just use this as my main workstation from now on.
And I think if you look at the change in vernacular from Red Hat, it almost seems like they're kind of trying to structure towards, instead of, they're trying to get away from that idea that we are this bleeding edge beta testing software, because they're trying to, they're split it up.
They got the rings approach and the things you can depend upon. They got the workstation spin, the cloud spin, and the server spin.
Right.
By the way, one of the interesting things about the server spin, XFS is the default file system now.
Yeah, I maintain that so where Fedora really comes down for me is I am a Red Hat system administrator, and so when I play with things long before they ever actually hit Red Hat. So for example, System Control, when they made this change to System D, I was doing that 2 or 3 years before, 2 years I guess, before it actually came out in RHEL 7.
So by the time it hit a server, you knew how to use System CTL and how to enable and disable System D services.
It was, in fact, I was almost more comfortable with that than the service command. And then it's not funny because in RHEL 7 they actually symlink service. But with DNF now, I can get used to DNF.
Right.
And so when it rolls out in RHEL 9 or 8 or whenever it comes out, no big deal.
So it's happening all over again.
Yeah, and so... And
can you, hold on, pause there. DNF. It's not totally there yet, but it's pretty badass. There's been nothing we haven't been able to do with DNF that we couldn't do with Yum, including adding repos from the command line, like doing the whole add manage repo command. Also, I dig the fact that if a repo goes 404 on me, which happens when it's a new version of the distro, DNF doesn't crap the bed. It's just like, okay, I'm disabling that for now. Or this update is broken, I'll just skip it and continue on.
Yeah.
To me, some of the default assumptions in DNF now make getting up and going with Fedora faster.
Yeah.
DNF is a nice improvement. Sometimes you do DNF install and you'll say like a command and it just hangs there for a second, but at the same time I don't have to issue secondary update commands to update the repo list or anything like that. It just all happens super fast. So I wanted to make sure we touched the DNF. Seems to be a very great transition, and if you get a right repo, you integrate with Copper. And by the way, Copper is turned on as a source in DNF by default, so you can just start adding Copper repos to DNF as you want. Yeah. So anyways, what were you going to say? So as you get to play with DNF, you get that experience?
Well, what I was saying is, as I get to play with DNF, I learn about all the problems and all the different things that I can do with it and all the things that work well and how I want to accomplish things in DNF. And so when that actually hits a server, I will be 2 steps ahead. And so the great thing about that is, I do these recertification things where basically the first time you go through Red Hat certification, they spend 2 weeks, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day going through everything. When you do the recertification, you could pay a lot of money to, I suppose, go through the whole class again, but most of us just pay for the little quickie 2-day, here's what's new, and then you take the test, right? You know what a pain that is? Can you imagine learning all that in a because it's not just DNF. Like imagine if you're going where now System D is new and DNF is new and all these things change and you're trying to.
If you've been only following Red Hat Enterprise or CentOS, and all that stuff is so much new stuff. But in Fedora, you just take it as it comes.
Yeah, and I get a chance to play with it on my laptop. And the other thing is too is again, personal opinion here. Red Hat eats their own dog food. So Ruth Seeley from Red Hat, she runs Fedora on her laptop. I forget the gentleman's name that travels with her all the time. He runs Fedora on his laptop and does 3D printing on it. So when problems come up in Fedora, I trust the Red Hat to fix those things because their employees are suffering from those problems. As compared to other companies, if you're making a Linux distro but you're not actually using it, how would you know if there's a problem? So to me, that's the most valuable thing from Red Hat.
Here's what I'm thinking. And I made this pitch in Unplugged, so I'll make it really short. Just sort of to piggyback on your value of Red Hat. The true value of Red Hat is the same value that Canonical offers Ubuntu. It's a big commercial company that can call up a company like Seagate or a company like Intel or a company like Broadcom and say, we need to talk. I'd like to fly some of your guys out here. or some of your gals out here, and I'd like to have them sit in an office and work with some of our guys and gals who work on some code. I'd like to spend $1,000 to do this. I'm willing to hire a lawyer to make sure this is okay. I want to make sure we go through the right legal processes. I want to fly people out to go to this conference. I want to make sure that we can buy this hardware to test these things. I want to invest in hiring people to develop on this project because it's important to us.
Right.
I see this as a position we need to be in the market, and I'm willing to invest in this technology to make us a leader in these markets. These are things that Red Hat in the background brings to the Fedora project that make it a continuing relevant project, despite, even if, say, Fedora has less users than Ubuntu or Fedora has less users than Debian, the fact that it brings that legitimacy of Red Hat behind it gives it a serious long-term potential in my mind. There's very few distributions out there that have that kind of backing behind it. So, that said, if you take something like Fedora and you make Copper more relevant, you make some of the applications easier to get going. So that way I don't have to spend an hour trying to figure out how to get Steam running, or I still can't get HaruPad installed, or all of these little tiny things, or for some reason I don't have audio in Flash under Chrome, but I have audio in Flash under Firefox, and the Fedora project couldn't care less why that could be. But if these little things work out over time, Fedora is so close, in my opinion, to being the one true Linux distro for real Linux enthusiasts. It rides so close to upstream, but yet it manages to bring in its own innovations. And sometimes these innovations show up in super, super tiny ways, like the network manager CAPTCHA, or the fact that if you have some command running in your terminal and you Alt-Tab out of your terminal, Fedora has decided, you know what? We're going to notify you via the new GNOME notification system. Nobody else does that. Fedora does it. There's just these little things that Fedora does that make it super nice. They're so close to being the Jesus distro for me. So close.
And you realize, too, the other nice thing is, so with Arch, and don't get me wrong, I love Arch. I have Arch on my ThinkPad. It's a great distro. But then one of the other things I really like about Fedora is, at the end of the day, there is a company that's saying, listen, in a year or two, in 3 years or 4 years, this has to be production ready. We have to roll this out on thousands and thousands and thousands of production ready servers. So they are going to somewhat steer the direction. And I'm not necessarily saying that Arch is going to do a worse job of that than Fedora, but what I am saying is when Red Hat steps up and says, hey, you know what, DNF, this new package thing, it's not working right? Let's hire a couple more developers and dump it in, make sure we ramp that up, because that needs to be ready for when we ship it to our commercial
customers. That makes
a difference. But really, for me, what it really comes down to is, and I like to believe that there is some little Red Hat boy going to some little Red Hat girl at Red Hat and saying, hey, my laptop isn't working because this problem happens, and then the little Red Hat boy hands his laptop to the little Red Hat girl, and she makes change in the development because she's the developer, and they're in one office.
Right.
And they have that communication
and to that
system going.
point, actually, perfectly to that point, I mentioned I had that issue where I had a blank screen and Wayland wouldn't start. You know what Red Hat's answer is to that? They just moved another one of their staff members over to full-time Nouveau development to get the NVIDIA open source graphics driver in a better spot.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully by Fedora 23 or 24, that problem is totally solved because they just paid somebody to write the code to make that better. You can't deny the difference that makes. And so Fedora is in a very unique position there. And the fact that they had 22 is sort of the next step after 21. Really what we are seeing here is they have built on top of so much that happened in 21.
Yeah.
So much with the different rings and the workstation build. It is Fedora 21 was a totally different release. Fedora 22 builds on top of that new beginning. And I can only imagine how I truly have to ask myself if by Fedora 24, perhaps, if I haven't completely switched to Fedora. Because I was thinking about the short release time. I mean, how long do I really keep machines installed anyways? 2 years?
You can upgrade. There is an upgrade path.
And I could upgrade if I needed to.
do it, but
I could if I needed to. And I'm like, okay, you know what? If I can get 18 months of updates, and the Copper gives me my more current packages, so things like Chrome and Steam and whatever the hell else I care about, stay current despite that, then that 18-month window really isn't that bad. I kind of reload every 18 months anyways, or I could do an upgrade if I needed to.
Yeah.
It really comes down to software availability and just those small little things. And I can't quite quantify all of them, but we've been sitting here.
Right.
I've probably said a dozen times, God, this is 10 times easier under Arch.
Yeah, and it is. But so you have to look at. There's another side to it too. Is if you want to translate some of that stuff into the commercial sphere, or to put it into perspective for you. So let's say you figure out the perfect way to do Arch. What are you going to do when you want to go to DigitalOcean and spin that up, right? Fedora or really CentOS or Red Hat or whatever. That's going to be supported on basically every VPS, every server. that's some way that you can, there's some value to that. I think that you can develop skills, you can hone skills on your laptop, and then translate those to a rock solid server. And if you needed to, you could get support with it. You could buy a support contract for $800 a year.
That's truly the Ubuntu value pitch.
Yeah.
And so if they can make Fedora workstation. And maybe they have to have an LTS release to get enterprises to take this seriously.
I would like that. See, I would like that. I would like that if Fedora did an LTS.
They have a great package here. I mean, Fedora has the possibility of being the one true operating system for everyone. Because you've got, I know this sounds stupid, but you've got Fedora Core, which is just a super base OS. You've got Fedora Cloud, Fedora Server, and Fedora Workstation. So I could run the same basic OS on across all these devices. The thing that we have to figure out is how do we manage updates? How do we manage updating them when the release window is so small?
Yeah.
And that's something that they're working on. Maybe Project Atomic steps in here and helps that. But for right now, for me, if you came to me and said, Chris, Arch has been removed from the internet, I would have probably gone to Ubuntu in the past. Now I'm going Fedora, and Fedora 22 at that. And they have respins. I might try the KDE based respin, but so solid, so fast, and so if you're an Arch user or if you've installed Gnome on top of another distro, Fedora it's just a couple of rough edges that Fedora polishes really nice. I'm really impressed. Do you have any closing thoughts on 22?
No, I have been a Fedora user for a long time. I'm an unapologetic Fedora user. I use other distros, because the reality is that there are more Ubuntu users than anything else. So I need to stay current on how to do things in Ubuntu. But at the end of the day, my machine at home has been Fedora since Fedora Core 1, and I can't say that I'm quite ready to upgrade it from Fedora 21 just yet. I'm probably going to give it another week or two to kind of let some things...
I would too.
To let some things iron out. But so far, I think it's a solid release.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are this. Just to echo what Noah said, I think it's worth giving it a couple of weeks before you make the jump. To me, when a new Ubuntu release comes out, it seems like pretty much all of the repos and all the PPAs and all the packages pretty much ready to go in day one. Not always, but pretty damn close. With Fedora... not at all. Like, a lot of stuff in the Copper repository, not ready to go. Steam in the RPM Fusion repos, not ready to go. It just takes a little bit longer, but I'm talking, this is the week of release. You give it 2 weeks, you give it 3 weeks, and then you give it a month, and it's a total non-issue. So, and why not? If you got a good installation, write it out for a couple of more weeks, and then I would recommend a clean installation to Fedora 22. They've made some improvements to the installer. It's still a little wonky, but they've made some improvements to the installer. You can check that out. And then I really think it's going to be, I think you will consider it to be the best release ever. And by the way, dude, that FedUp utility, the FedUp utility you can use to upgrade is getting a total redesign for the Fedora 23. So upgrading to future releases from Fedora 22 could be getting a lot better. So we'll give you our take on that when 23 hits the web. All right, Noah, that's the Linux Action Show's look at Fedora 22. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But Noah, we have a few things to follow up on, like some emails. And Big D writes in with our first email. He says, I just got back from a Carnival cruise through the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, man, doesn't that sound nice? Oh, boy. To several ports of call. As is typical with cruise dinners, they paired up my wife and I with another couple. Yeah, have you ever been on a cruise?
I have not. Love to go on a cruise.
Yeah, Angela and I went on a cruise, and we had the same thing. We got paired up with a couple other people.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they're the same people you have dinner with every single night.
So if you don't like them, you're screwed.
Yeah, okay. All right. So anyways, he said we were paired up with another couple, newlyweds on their honeymoon, who just both happened to be Microsoft executives. They're wonderful people. But whenever we talked about work topics, it got a little uncomfortable. For example, my wife kept stomping my foot and giving me elbows as I countered just about everything good they felt Microsoft had to offer. I think they got a reasonable education on Linux and open source. Anyway, attached is a nice Windows error message I found in the cabin room TV. The dialog box looked like it's from Windows NT. Of course, I showed them the picture at dinner. All right, so here we go. Here it is.
So first of all, I want you to know that this guy is...
It is NT, dude. That's NT4.
So this guy is the recipient of the May Noah's Amazing Awesome Person Award for doing that, right? Like here's the thing: my wife would know better than to kick me under the table because it wouldn't shut me up.
You're still going to talk about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, newlyweds and stuff.
Yeah, but this guy's great.
So this is an NT4. Wow, man, I have not seen this error message in so long. So in NT4, you would get three options. You could wait for the task, you could end the task, or you could cancel the task. And so this is the TV entertainment system.
Neither one of those three options actually ever fixed anything. Right. Just pointing that out. Right. You know what's funny? I see that and inside of my stomach hurts because
do you remember what happens when you remember what happens when you click end task?
Well, when you clicked end task, the button would click, but the window would actually go away.
Do you remember so depending on your NT4 setup, something else would happen after you click the button. A program called Dr. Watson for Windows NT would launch. Do you remember Dr. Watson? It was the first Microsoft debugger. Dr. Watson would come up. Yeah. Wow.
You know what's funny? When I see stuff like that, I'm reminded tenfold why I'm so against Windows.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I hear you, man.
What do we have next in the mail?
You ready for, I think it's Ari's email?
REB writes in and says, "Hey, Chris and Noah, longtime listener and wannabe Linux guru. You guys do such a great job with all of your tech shows, but last blows everything away. My question for you guys is, what would be the best way to do complete home automation system with the Raspberry Pi?
Ooh.
I've been looking for a couple ways to cut down on utility costs and thought that automation would be a great way to go. I'm looking at reducing these costs and replacing most of my lights with RGB LED light strips and redoing the thermostat so that I could track how much energy is being used. But if I'm going to go that far with home automation system, I'd also like to have a room with little touchscreen to control the lights, music, heat, and do things like the weather, reminders, calendar,
so like a panel when you enter the room, like the theater room, dim the lights and get everything ready.
Right. Voice commands and the ability to send messages from one controller interface to the other would be a cool features, but are not a requirement. Well, what's the way to do that best accomplishes these goals? Is it effective on a budget, not too complex in terms of coding? I have minimum experience with Linux, and all of it with Fedora. You rock, sir. Also, it would be cool if you guys did a tutorial on something like this. It would certainly pique my interest on usability on Linux if there's a more easy way to set up tutorials on implementing Linux in my daily life. Thank you for your time and help with this question. You guys do a great job with all of your shows. Keep up the totally awesome and amazing job with what you guys do so well.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Before you get to that. So one thing I want to touch on, he mentions it would be awesome if you could do a tutorial on something like this. Absolutely agree. But with a huge caveat. So I'm not going to do a tutorial on something that I don't think is a good idea. And if I think we could show you something on this show that you would go do and then have a bad time, I'm never going to do it because I don't want to show you how cool something is and get you all excited about it and then have you go implement it and be disappointed. And I know a lot of you are like way more savvy than I am, and that's not a problem. But a huge proportion of the audience are Windows users that watch from afar that want to switch, or Linux users that have just switched. And if we sort of pop their bubble and give them a solution that isn't all that great, they kind of become disenfranchised with Linux and open source. And the big show is not here to make people disappointed with Linux. The big show is here to show you where you can use Linux where it really kicks ass. Now, Chris is not trying to downplay, and I'm using myself in the third person, not trying to downplay the Raspberry Pi and how super kick-ass it is. However, you know, Ari, the thing is you're a little new to Linux, and there's some bumpy roads there. And Noah, I know you have some thoughts of this as a solution, too.
Yeah, so everything in my house is automated, and I mean everything. When I walk up, where's my key? When I walk up to my door, there's a transponder.
Hold on, dude. Hold on, let me see this. This, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching the video version, is Noah's keychain.
Yeah.
And you might notice there's no keys on this keychain.
That tends to be a problem.
That does. And of course, there are some keys in here that slide out, but this is more than meets the eye, Noah. There's a lot of little hidden things in here. Right. This is really neat.
So what they did was so this is what it comes with, this little plate, and I had them embed a transponder. So if you notice, this one sticks out a little further than this side does. So there's a transponder in here. So I hold that up to the door, and and it's an RFID reader, unlocks the door. There's an electromagnetic lock that secures the door, so that unlocks. When it sees my key fob is present, it automatically disarms the security alarm, turns on the lights in the entryway. Every room in my house has a motion detector. If there's no motion for more than 10 minutes, it kills the light in that room. If you walk in, turns on the light in that room. I have a controller downstairs, so at my workstation I can turn things on and off. It wakes my workstation up downstairs if I'm walking around, if I'm coming downstairs.
This is really probably how a lot of houses are going to be built soon.
Right, and so it is no exaggeration to say that, in much to my wife's dismay, everything in my house is automated. And I won't use something that I can't use Linux for. So if I have to use, I won't have, like, if there was something that, like, so there's like the HAL system that requires a Windows box downstairs. I'm not going to use that because I'm just not going to have Windows. I'm okay with using a little Windows utility if I can run it in Wine or in a VirtualBox or something like that. But that, even VirtualBox, that's stretching it. That's like my very limit.
I mean, you're talking about stuff that, like, is in your house.
Yeah, right.
It's your house, man. It's like how lights turn on and stuff.
What I have found is Linux on the Raspberry Pi feels like a bad science project to me. That's what it feels like. When I've tried to do lights on Linux and stuff, it always turns out where it works like 9D times, but then it fails once. And the problem with that is it's almost worse than it failing reliably because I come to expect it. I hit the thing and I don't wait to see if the light comes on. I hit the thing and I just walk in. Then all of a sudden I realize the light isn't on.
And not just that, but it tanks spousal approval. When it works, doesn't work. And then when it doesn't work, it's totally unexpected because it's been working for so long. You're not prepared for it not to work.
Right.
You're out. You're not available. Something's happening.
So what my answer has been is I've gone to controller-based devices. So I buy hardware devices that everything that is done by automation, there's not, like, the only exception to that is the access control system. I have to enroll and unenroll key fobs with a piece of software, but everything else, even that is still, there's a physical controller. So that works perfectly. The system that I have, the way it sets up is when I turn a light on, when you turn the light on, the physical light switch is actually completing that circuit, and it's their dimmers, and so it brings the light on. So there is no delay when I hit the button, but my controller becomes aware that that light is on and then propagates that to all of the other controllers in the house. So it's instantaneous response. If I need to, so for instance, by default, the lights come on only to 35% because I find that that's about the most I really need them on at night to see something. But there are times when I'm putting something together.
That's cool, dude.
You don't need 100%.
So your lights only come on to 35%?
But off the motion. But if you need full light, I can always walk over and double tap, and it brings them up full. But the thing is, here's what I found.
I got to come play with all this. This is so cool.
Yeah, what I found
I should come over there. I'll wear your Google Glass, and you tour me through your house. That'd be cool.
What you find is, when you actually look, and there are studies that publish this, is that you don't actually need 100% light in 4 cans. So my living room has 4 cans.
Sure, yeah.
You think you need 500 watts of light, 400 watts of light?
Actually, we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lights in the studio right now. None of them are over 70% right now.
Exactly. And you know what? You can see just fine.
Yeah.
So for normal things sitting around, and then we have relax mode. So the Chronos is aware of the time and the date. So for example, in the wintertime, I want the lights to come on, like the outdoor lights, like the patio lights and stuff. I want those to come on earlier in the wintertime because the sun sets. So it'll pull the sunset from the internet, and then it will turn the landscaping lights and stuff like that on at sunset, and then turn them on.
That's
so
cool.
All of that stuff becomes automated. So I'm not telling you not to automate. I'm just telling you don't do it with GPIO on the Pi. I don't think it's going to be a good experience. And I've installed enough a home automation system both at my house and for clients. I can just tell you, it's
not reliable.
It just doesn't work.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll get there. But
we'll
right
keep
now,
watching it. We're not writing it off.
Right now, like things like X10 and there's another open protocol that's going around. They just don't work reliably. And so it wouldn't be my choice. But you can Google around and take a look on it. But one of these days I'll have to give a walkthrough of my house and we can show all the junk that's
I
in
think
there.
we should do a straw poll. Okay. I think we should do somebody in the chat room set us up a straw poll. Do we need to do a Last Cribs episode? But I feel like if we're going to do a Last Cribs episode, I got to go out there.
Yeah.
So we got to know. If I'm going to fly out there.
I guess the reason
you always fly out here. I should have to fly out there.
The reason I guess I've shied away from it in the past is because it's not anti-Linux because, like I said, they're all controller-based, but it's not really pro-Linux either. So it's the software that is used is being done on Windows.
Yeah. You look at our media production, our philosophy, both you and I kind of like, if you can do it in hardware and then bring it into Linux, that's always going to be better. Do it in hardware as much as possible and then bring it to Linux for controlling it, for the interface, for the front end absolutely every single damn time. Like Linux is going to rock that ass.
Right.
And honestly, Noah, I wonder if he had written in and said, instead of using Raspberry Pis, if he had said, I'm going to use a NUC.
I don't like a computer controlling the things that
Are appliance-based.
Well, because so here's the thing. My printer hasn't worked for the last 3 weeks. Do you know why? Because when I get home, Chris, from doing my job of fixing everyone's printer, you know the last thing I feel like doing is fixing my own freaking printer.
Yes.
My wife, she looks at me, she goes, "We do own an IT company, right?" And I'm like,
yes.
"Yeah." And she's like, "Why the heck can't I print something from my laptop?"
Yeah,
I'm just
I know.
wondering why that can't be a thing.
100% understand.
So the problem is, if I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go take a crap in the dark today because my lights don't come on," and I don't really feel like defragging or replacing the solid state in my light controller.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
Well, or like me yesterday, I'm like ripping cords out of my desk and I spill a thing of water, like onto the NUC, onto my home server NUC. Like if
that
all
was
of
great.
my automation stuff had been based off of that NUC, I would have been screwed.
I love computers. I love technology. I love servers. I understand uptime, but there are just certain things in my house that just need to work 100% of the time without fail.
Yeah.
And things like lights and my air conditioner and my
Yeah.
heater, that's all part of it.
If you've got another opinion, if you've done something similar, if you've got your whole house using Raspberry Pis, or if you echo Noah's sentiment, I would love to hear your feedback because this is my 2016 project. Go over to linuxactionshow.reddit.com and find the feedback thread for this week's episode and let us know your experiences with all of that. Now, Lewis writes in, with some follow-up. Noah talked about this super tiny laptop that he has got. It's a Vio Sony laptop. It's pretty low end, but show us here.
Yeah, the thing I like about it, and of course it died. The thing I like about this is that it fits in my palm, so I can take it with me everywhere. And if you've never met me in person, then you probably are not aware that I literally don't go anywhere without my laptop, much to the annoyance and frustration of everyone else. Chris is like, hey, we're going to the gas station to fill up gas. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to grab my laptop. I'll be ready to go.
Or we're going
What
to
do
go
you
to
need your
dinner
laptop?
or lunch.
Yeah.
Or we're going to go to Safeway.
Yeah. I take my laptop everywhere. But you know what? Here's the thing. And you've been in the car when this has happened. I'm like, I can't get email. Why can't I get email?
Yeah.
Oh, the email server's down.
Yeah.
Well, now I have to SSH in and fix all this.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that if I don't
Right.
have a laptop with me?
So you found the perfect portable machine, but the problem is it's like a Core 2 and like people are
Core
writing...
2, it's an Atom.
Oh, and people aren't writing drivers for it so much anymore. So Lewis was watching, and he's like, look, I know Noah's got some compromises because he can't watch Flash videos. He's having all these kinds of problems. He has a few suggestions for you, sir, because he's got the triple EPC 1000HE with a single core Atom processor, the N28, N2080.
I think I have the same one.
Yeah. So here's what he's doing, Noah. What do you think about this? And I'm going to amend this as he goes. For YouTube, he's using MPV from the command line. He supplies MPV with the YouTube URL and watches the videos that way. That gets acceleration up, so you're not using Flash. Because one of the problems you've had is you can't watch Flash videos.
Yeah.
So MPV would solve that. You could also use things like YouTube download, or I got to give a plug for Minitube, a GTK application that gives you a desktop app front end to YouTube. You hate YouTube.com? I do.
Yeah.
Launch Minitube. You might try that.
Now,
Videos, he uses MPlayer from the command line.
Okay.
And he says you got to give up on VLC.
Yeah, VLC does not work. I mean, I've tried every different kind. I've tried even the lowest encoded of LAS. I can't watch.
Really?
Doesn't work. It just stutters.
We got to try it with MPV.
Yeah. We'll try it as soon as we get off the air.
Full HD videos, he says, are nearly impossible to watch. But he says, with this, after you make this change, you could probably watch 720p videos more or less.
All right.
Yeah.
So I can live with that. In fact, at first I thought I could live without videos altogether, but there are just fundamental things that apparently I do with videos that I never even really thought of. Like, for instance, show notes. I can't do show notes on it. And then I learned this week too, Mumble doesn't work. It's not powerful enough to run Mumble, and that's kind of irritating because. Now I did think it was funny. He joked that I should go back to the original Windows Vista installation. I joke not when I tell you I don't have Vista installation media, so that won't be happening. But
Noah, let's see if we can solve this one. It comes in from somebody named Noah.
Oh, that's a good name.
He says, "Hello, Chris, myself, and the chat room. Having canceled my cable TV, I have collected quite a bit of TV shows on my NAS. The problem is, I don't always want to pick a TV show. Sometimes I just feel like having a TV show start playing, right? Sometimes you have too many choices. Yeah. Like
that happens. That's the thing, it turns out.
Like, I got so many shows, I don't know what to watch. And one of the nice things about live TV is it just picks for me.
Well, you were talking about the other day how you sat down and you're like, oh, they have cable, so I can flip through the channels.
Yes. So having canceled my cable TV, I sometimes feel like I just need to have a TV show start playing. What I really like is to have software like Airtime. Now, if you guys are not familiar, Airtime is a really sweet online radio. We use it. We have a hosted solution for Airtime. It's like an IceCast server with a full front-end scheduling and playlist management and all of that kind of stuff. It always has something going, streaming for you all of the time, like a radio station you could tune into.
Right, and so what you can do is you can actually click into individual programs, and I can remove content or add content, and then it just and once it's set up, then it just sits and plays and scrolls through that. So I wouldn't really have to think about it. And so I have to believe that there's some way to do this with video, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, like okay, I might have a suggestion for you. Are you ready? Now I don't know. What are you using to watch it?
Well, my Western Digital, but I would be willing to change.
Does it do RTMP streams or RTSP streams?
Yes, but like I said, here's the thing. What I want to do, actually, it's in the email. What I want to do is I want to have a box that does whatever it does, and it will just output HDMI to an RF modulator. The RF modulator will then insert channel like 165, because I don't have cable, so I can be whatever I want. I'll do it channel 50. And then any TV in the house I turn to channel 50 will be what's downstairs. Because I can use the existing cable. What's the matter?
That'd be so sweet. Yeah. That'd be so sweet.
Yeah, I'm making my own TV station. And then the nice thing is I could add,
that'd be so sweet.
I could add different programs playing at the same time and modulate them over different channels. You got to do that here if
you do that. Okay, so here's my solution. Are you ready? Because I got an answer for you.
Okay,
I got an answer for you.
All right, okay. That's what I wrote in for.
Bro.
Sis.
Really? VLC can take a playlist and turn that into an RTSP stream, and you could do randomize in VLC. So you just point VLC at all of your MKV files or whatever you got and put it in a playlist, set up randomize, and then you could do, if you go into, so check it out. So I have VLC installed right here, right? Why don't I just show you? So here's VLC. Mm-hmm. If you do if you go in here, you have all these different options, right? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the freaking options is to stream. And if you stream, you can select a freaking playlist file and make an RTMP stream. You could feed that into something. It could be headless, dude. It could be sitting there on a box, headless, and then when you tune into it, you tune into it.
So that's kind of been my fallback, is to do something like this. I'd have to script it in such a way that I can drop the latest episodes from different TV shows into a folder, and it would replace them, which it could be done.
But right. Yeah, because you don't want to have to constantly be updating the playlist.
Well, that could be done with the script. You're right. But anyway,
because it is just a playlist file.
Right. But what I'm thinking is, well, not only that, you can tell VLC just play everything in this directory. Yeah. So I can have a script say dump all this stuff. Yeah. So it could be done. But I guess what I'm asking is, if somebody knows of a way to get Airtime, for a while in the forums they were actually talking about adding video play to Airtime, so it would be a feature, but don't know where that's going. But if anyone knows of a way that you can schedule TV shows to play in a given thing, I'd love to hear about.
You know, what would be perfect is like a Kodi plugin or something.
Yeah,
to integrate this.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that would be really nice. All right, Noah. Well, guess what? The audience did a straw poll. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
You know what? No. If you'd like to give us some feedback, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. Choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down. Or, even better, go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com and submit a thread there, and we'll get that. But, Linux, or you could email us directly, linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com. So the audience has voted. The straw poll was created by the IRC chat room. Should last cribs be a thing? Now, last week, wasn't I just bitching that we're always split on these things?
Yeah.
I was just bitching it's 50-50.
Yeah.
This time, 80% of the votes say we should do a last cribs. Only 2 votes say we shouldn't do a last cribs.
Losers.
Yeah.
Talking about being the odd guy out, right?
All right. So if we want to do this, if you'd like to see me go, I'll tell you what. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it.
Say it.
I'm going to say it.
All right.
We get to 530 patrons. I'll go to Noah's house and we'll do a Last Cribs episode. Because then I should probably be able to afford the ticket. Patreon.com/today. Support the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. If we get that to 530 patrons, just because of you guys, just because of the last audience, not because of the plugs I do every single day on Tech Talk Today, but because of the last audience, if that goes to 530, I will fly to Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Wow!
And I will wear Noah's Google Glass.
All right.
And we will do a Last Cribs episode to show all the automation stuff. Now, is there any way to do a direct flight to Grand Forks, North Dakota?
No, you have to go through Minneapolis. Well, I tell you what. Here's what you can do. I tell you what. Here's what I'll do. I will up your ante. if you fly to Minneapolis, I will drive to Minneapolis and come pick you up.
Really?
Yeah.
How long of a drive is that for you?
About same as Portland. It's 3 hours, 4 hours.
Really? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Patreon.com/today. That sounds fun.
Because it'll be less money. That was significantly
Well, and then we
cost.
can. Plus, when we drive in, we totally just talk about the show the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So that's like great show planning time.
We're working.
Yeah, we do though.
Yeah.
Like if we
Yeah,
could-
yeah, that's
dude, I'll pay for the gas and we'll write it off. So patreon.com/today. Let's make this happen. 530 of you. Seriously, if the last audience gets to 530, I'll fly out to Noah's house and we'll do a cribs. Also, if you feel like traveling or you're going to be out in the area, don't forget meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. We've got the meetup in London coming up on the 13th and the meetup at Southeast Linux Fest coming up on the 12th. And we're going to have a live coverage from Self. We may be doing some live streaming over the weekend. We haven't fully decided what our live coverage is looking like.
So, I don't know if you want to make this public or not. But,
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, we're good to go. Like the equipment is in. I've tested it. It's working. We're in the process of fine tuning some of this stuff to get it so that it goes over so that it's a little bit more condensed and I can get it out there. But we're going to be streaming. We'll have a stream on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Really? You want to say that?
Yeah. Because
Powered
it's
by
done.
Linux?
Yeah. OBS, all powered by Linux. But it's going to be way more streamlined. So I have spent hours in the past couple weeks researching equipment, buying equipment, putting equipment and testing things, pulling it back out.
He's been spending thousands of dollars, thousands of dollars of his thousands of dollars of his personal money. Not $3,000, not more than thousands of dollars of his personal money to set this up. Do you have pictures of it? I know it'll take you a second. But seriously, you've been working so hard on this. You should show them pictures of it. It's so badass.
Yeah, it is.
And while you look for pictures, I'll tell about it. So you guys know. For the background, Linux Action Show was going to Linux Fest Northwest back at the end of April. And we generally do our live broadcasts under Max and Wirecast because it's a pretty good software product for the price. And it's always bugged us. We've always wanted to be able to do it under Linux. And we didn't want to go to a freaking Linux Fest and rock it with a Mac. So S hit the fan. We decided it came time we were going to make a Linux rig. And we built the Alpha streaming rig to make a live Linux production happen on an event. And I'm talking switching, streaming, lower thirds, everything. But it was just sort of a rough build. And after we got it done, Noah and I thought, we could really make this a serious thing that we could do on an ongoing basis.
And the problem is, what you come down to is sometimes you're penny wise and pound foolish. So what it comes to is if I try and save a little bit of money, and so I'm just going to go with a tower. Yeah, I'm just going to go with a tower. I'm going to drag the monitor out. It's no problem. It sounds good at first because
no, it doesn't.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't sound easy, but it sounds better from a budget standpoint. Angela would like that, right?
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Okay, she likes that until we have to go to FedEx that crap to Self, and then it's like, it cost us $300 to FedEx it because we had to ship 7 packages and they all weighed a ton.
Yeah.
So the key is it has to be good audio quality. It has to be compact, condensed, lightweight, and I have to be able to set it up and tear it down. One of the biggest things that was frustrating the heck out of me, I had some of your equipment that was in the studio, some of my equipment from Grand Forks, some of our rental equipment from Ultispeed, and some random stuff that was from the back room that we were going to dedicate towards the project.
Yeah.
And so when we were packing stuff up, I am really trying hard to keep track of everything, and I'm like, everyone slow down, stop putting stuff in random boxes. I can't keep track of all this.
Well,
and I get back to the studio, and one of the key components, the microphone cable for the second mic, a day before you're going to go on the air, is gone because we've lost it. That can't happen. Like that's not a scalable thing.
And the other thing that we have is a lot of times these fests and these conferences happen at a facility that's another thing, like a college or a hotel or whatever, a business. And so you have got a hour, 45 minutes. If you're unlucky.
We had dinner, man. We had dinner that night.
Yeah.
We got there. We had 40 minutes to get everything set up.
Yeah.
And then in the process of setting up, we realized we forgot like half the stuff we needed.
So you've got to be able to get in there and get it all racked, get it set up, get ready to go, and get it streaming. And the worst part is you can't mess up a single thing or else it won't work. Like it has to be error prone, and there's no room for like busting a port, or there's no room for like forgetting to bring something.
Yeah. So essentially, what we've done is I've condensed it down. So if you look here, this is the actual production rack. And so what we have at the very top, if you look, I've got a close-up picture of the.
That's Telegram, Noah.
Yeah, it is Telegram. if you look here, this is the far left port here is that's
Ethernet
an Ethernet jack. So basically when I open this up, I take the covers off, I plug network in, I plug our 2 HDMI cameras in, and the next 2, I plug the C920 for our crowd shots, and then I plug our mixer feeds and returns into there. Everything else is wired behind the rack.
So a theater of the mind here, what Noah has decided to do for you audio listeners is because we are unplugging and plugging stuff in all the time, time, Noah has given dedicated mounted ports for our Ethernet, our USB, and our XLR cables in the rack. Those then run back to the Linux box. So the idea being, if we're plugging stuff in and we're jamming stuff in as we set up, if we bust one of these ports open, we ruin a USB port, we're out $12, but we're not out a $300 capture device.
Well, not only that, the other thing is too is if you follow this audio chain, so we have to go into the system itself. It has to go into the compressor, out of the compressor, into the audio interface, out of the audio interface, into the computer. And so this rack, what this accommodates is everything is being wired inside of the device itself. It's not being done outside. So all I do is I plug in power, I plug in my cameras, I plug in network, and we're on the air. That's it. We're done. But because of this, and then I have a Pelican case that's going to have like the cameras, the mics, the stands, the mixer, stuff like that. But all of this stuff will fit into 2 cases.
Yeah.
And so that is going to enable me I will be able to be on location and be on the air within 10 minutes. From the time I have it all packed up till the time I can unbox it and be on the air, takes me about 10 minutes to plug in everything.
Powered by Linux.
Yeah, everything is Linux. No Windows, no Mac.
Yeah.
None of that garbage.
It's very awesome. Very awesome. So meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting if you'd like to meet some of us in person. We've mentioned this before, but we have the Southeast Linux Fest and the Learn About Open Tech. And this is an area we're growing in. Really, like if I was to go to Grand Forks and hang out with Noah, we would be streaming it from that rig.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/today. I'm serious. Did we get any more? We have 502. I'm going to refresh. 504.
All right. That's off to a good start.
Two people took us seriously. We're not going to get anywhere with 2 people, but at least 2 people. I'm serious. We get
Well,
to 530.
you said 5:30, so we've got 26 more to go.
I probably should have told Angela first, but I'm willing to do it. I think she'll agree.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And we'll get out there. We'll make it happen.
You know what we should do too? We'll have to talk about, see if there's a way, because we were talking about filming part of Lass on the lake. So we have to see if we can do something like that.
Dude, we should do like a segment.
Yeah.
There's no reason we couldn't do the pics ahead of time from the lake.
Yeah.
The pics from the lake.
That'd be great.
Oh, okay. All right. Come on. Patreon.com/today. Let's make this happen. And then if you want to meet up with some folks, meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. Last but not least, make this show better, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. If you'd like to send us some feedback, that's on the contact page. And if you'd like to join us live, we do this live at jblive.tv. Just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and then it converts it to your local time zone. We start at 10 a.m. Pacific, if you know what that is off the top of your head. And then you can just join us for that. Now, we've mentioned before, but I'm going to mention it again. Linux Unplugged will be live on Monday. Yeah, we're going to do it Monday at 9 a.m. because Noah's still in town. We want to follow up on some Fedora reviews. If you've been running Fedora 22 and you want to tell us your thoughts, we have an open Mumble room. We call it our virtual lug. Join that. Give us your take on Fedora. We'll be talking about that and other things in Linux Unplugged on Monday's episode at 9 a.m., which will then be followed up by Coda Radio. So Monday's going to be a great day on the jblive.tv stream, and all of those times are in your local time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Now, one last obnoxious thing to mention. I'm going to just do this for a little while, and then I'm going to stop. I hate that I have to keep mentioning this. It feels dirty, but listen, I got to tell you this. I switched Twitter accounts.
Oh yeah.
And none of yous are following me, you assholes.
None of yous. You have 700. You had 700 followers the first day you announced it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had like way more before.
7,000.
So I'm at twitter.com/ChrisLAS. I've set up a new Twitter account. This is going to be my personal stuff. I don't know 100% what I'm going to do, but I'm going to try to offend some of you on my twitter.com/ChrisLAS account and get you all upset. And then the official business will happen at twitter.com/JupiterSignal, like live streams, schedule changes, business announcements, stuff like that. Totally worth following. We won't be obnoxious. We respect you guys. But I'm twitter.com/ChrisLAS. Twitter.com/JupiterSignal for the official Jupiter Broadcasting news feed. And then you can follow Noah. He's Kernel Linux on Twitter.
Yeah. So I've had the same Twitter account since I started doing the show, and I've managed to accumulate to, I think, like 300 Twitter followers.
Yeah.
You had your Twitter handle for a day, and you accumulated 700. So I wouldn't worry about it. I think they're coming. They haven't caught up. They haven't caught up.
No. You gotta remind them, because you see these guys, they don't love Twitter.
Oh yeah.
And like they probably half of them don't even remember their passwords.
Yeah.
So you got to keep reminding them because you know.
Log in, follow Chris, then he can
Yeah.
stop using it again.
And then you could find out about some sort of. I mean, I'm not going to put my dick online like some podcasters do, but I'll try to put something controversial so that way you'll follow me, because I know apparently that's what it takes these days. No, not really, but maybe. So do that, twitter.com/ChrisLAS, and then Jupiter Signal for the official feed, Kernel Linux for that guy. And if you want to make this show better, it's linuxactionshow.reddit.com. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Wow, look at the whites difference. Look at that, dude.
Look at that.
Hold on. You see that? There's a difference in the white coloring between Firefox and Chrome.
Yeah, Firefox looks better.
It actually doesn't. Look how much better the white looks in Chrome. Look at this. Now look.
Yes.
Look how bright that white is,
yes.
and look how muted it is there. It has a blue tint to it in Firefox.
You say so.
You don't see that?
I don't see that. Put it in the
You
stream.
really... Look at her skin color. Look at her skin color. You don't see that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a little washed.
That's Firefox.
Yeah, okay, all right.
That's Chrome.
All right.
Firefox, Chrome.
Yeah.
She looks better in Chrome.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Google, runs YouTube, so they have that going for
Don't
them.
give me that.
You have to use Firefox.
See if it crashes on me in the middle of
I
the show.
love it.
Wow, did you see how Firefox rendered that page too? What a joke.
What do you mean? What's wrong?
If you didn't see it, it's just not worth it. It's just,
Okay,
it's
all right.
just a joke.
It's not even worth it.
It's not even worth it.
It's not even worth it. It's worth for me to complain, but
It is.
yeah.
Well, if you saw it, I wanted
Yeah,
to.
no, I didn't
I
see
wanted to bask in the fail that I was witnessing, but you weren't there to bask in the fail with me.
It's funny. You use Firefox every day, awful lot.
No,
Don't
it
have to
doesn't fail. It doesn't affect the way it works. It's kind of like when you go to the DMV and you
Yeah.
can get like a nice young person who really helps you, and then you go to the DMV and
Yeah.
you get the old person who's slow and doesn't really
Yeah.
care about their job.
Dust is coming out of their mouth.
That's what Firefox reminds me
Yeah.
of. The way it loaded that page, it's like, Firefox, you don't even try. Essentially,
Seems
so what
kinda
happened?
harsh.
What happened was here's what happened.
Tell me what happened.
The Flash object pops. So here's what I enter the URL
Yep,
of the
URL.
site I want to go to. Right. I had another site up on the page. What happens is the first thing that happens when I hit enter is Firefox, just for a microsecond, locks up, then goes. And then the Flash object shows up in the middle of the page, while the rest of the old website's still
Yeah,
there.
I've seen
and then
that,
the rest
actually.
of the old website starts to just
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
flash away, and then
Yeah.
the other website comes in, and I'm like,
Yeah.
really? You can't even render a page
yeah,
correctly?
yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Do the way I look at it, Chris, is the page got there, right?
Yeah.
So
I know.
might have made a mess
I just,
coming out in.
for me, it's important. It's important about how it gets there too. Noah, it's important.
Yeah. Clearly.
It's important.
I think that's.
It's important.
I think that is atrocious.
I think it's quite important. You see that outrageousness right there? Popey says the BitTorrent sync is outrageous. It is proprietary garbage. What do you say?
I agree with him. However, I kind of work off of this idea is that once I can get everyone off of Windows and onto Linux, I'll start worrying about getting everyone onto open source. Once I get everyone on open source, then I'll start working about free and Librem software. But if you follow that rabbit hole, well, it's proprietary, so it doesn't work. Then, well, if it's open source, is it really true freedom? Is it Libre respecting? Where does that rabbit hole end? And how do you draw the line? So, I draw a really hard line in the sand with, does it work on Linux? If I can use it on Linux, I'm happy about it. If it doesn't, if I can't use it on Linux, I just can't use it because I don't have not Linux. So that's a really easy hard line in the sand to draw, and I'd be more than happy to move to open source alternatives when they become available.
All right, so here's my take on BitTorrent sync. I want to talk about BitTorrent sync for a second. I am so not surprised by what happened where they did go to a closed system and you got to pay to have a lot of users and things like that. I wanted it to work because for podcasters, it's the mecca. It is the Jesus solution. It's so perfect. So for podcasters, I could create a shared key with all of you. Every one of you that joins that swarm becomes part of my CDN. BitTorrent Sync gives me a built-in CDN. Every user becomes part of the distribution network. That eliminates a barrier of entry for podcasters that is extremely expensive. I can get worldwide distribution without having to pay CashFly or Libsyn or anybody else, and I can do big-ass video files. I can do big MP3 files, FLAC files for all I care. What's up? It's amazing. I could have an MP3 key, I could have a FLAC key, an MP4 key, and you guys just pick which one you want. So from like a removing barriers for anybody to distribute content, that's incredible. Because all I have to do as a podcaster is I take my file and I drop it in a folder. And when I drop that file in a folder, I'm taking care of my FTP upload, I'm taking care of my publishing to the CDN, I'm taking care of my RSS feeds. I'm taking care of notifying my users. All of that. All of those things. All of those things. All of them. All of them. Just by dropping a file in a folder. And then you, as the end user, do nothing. You do nothing. Your computer the moment the episode is released, your computer just starts downloading it and putting it in a folder for you. And you could have that go to a device. You could have that sync over. It is so magic. It is what podcasting needs to be. Totally automatic. I drop it in a folder and it shows up in your folder. And that is what to make podcasting like totally accessible to everybody. It's got to be so easy. And the thing is, BitTorrent Sync not only made it crazy ass easy for the end user where it just shows up in a folder, but it totally removed all of those other things for the content creator. The CDN, the uploading, the distributing it to users, all of that, the RSS, all of that is gone. It had so much potential. And then you think about like, SOPA and CISPA and cracking things down. Like if you had a podcast out there, like one like Unfilter or the No Agenda Show or one that talks about drugs or whatever, and it would all of a sudden be deemed inappropriate, you can't shut down a BitTorrent sync folder. You could pull down something off YouTube. It happens to me on a weekly basis. You could pull down something off of Libsyn. That happens too. You could shut down a GitHub account. You can shut down a web host, but you can't shut down the torrents. And so it truly is a way too for people to be able to distribute files without it getting shut down. And that's, not a huge concern, but it's a nice to have on top of all of that other stuff. So BitTorrent Sync offered so much potential for content creators.
Content creators, I agree. It just, as Popey points out, since you can't really identify where that data is going for sure, I don't know I'd really put my personal stuff on it.
Well, you just make sure you're careful who you share it with. But yeah, like for public distribution of files, though, it's incredible. Incredible.
So you would take your personal data and put it through a solution that you can't really track that data?
What do you mean track the data?
You're taking them at their word that it's doing what it says it's doing.
Well, you can see where it's sending to. So you know where it's sending to. And you can see what it's receiving to. And there's no like Dropbox like back-end storage. There's no cloud centralized storage. So
you go on Amazon, order the correct size cables, conduit them, and be happy to send you a bill of $200 or $300. We could do that, or you could just have them on the floor of the place ever walk.
All of a sudden, it's a disaster when Chris does it, but when Noah and Rikai do it, it saves money. It makes sense. Oh, Chris, this is our only option. But when you do it, we're gonna come in here and show you how it's done. Give me a break.
No. Yeah, we will organize the cables. We will organize the cables. Just it wasn't going to happen last night. We didn't have any time. We didn't have any time. We ran out of time.
Yeah, no, it's cool.